Keep holding it.
Oh, it is working?
Yes.
Oh, y'all can hear me? Oh, it's just for the camera. Oh, that's right, because this is a small room. 'Cause I wasn't sure if we were going to have 5 people or 500 people, because it was there was no RSVP. So I am so happy you guys are here. Maybe we'll have more people kind of come in as we keep talking. But thank you for coming to the workshop. And I see familiar faces for adoptive families that are already signed on, and families that are possibly interested, and social workers that do home studies for me are here, Melissa. And we have a Leanne who's with actually BBVA, so if anybody has questions about adoption loans or questions about anything like that, that's Leanne can help you over there. She's in the corner. But and I thank Eric Freeby and Lori Wolf for speaking today, and my husband who's helped me, and my daughter who's the redhead up there, and my husband who's way over there. But thank you so much for coming in. I hope that I can address your questions, and I really wanted to just have this workshop to answer questions about the adoption process, because a lot of people have misconceptions about it. So I thought, let's do a workshop. Let's have speakers who can educate. So I appreciate you guys coming. This is my first workshop to do this in 24 years. This is my first workshop, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I do love to do what I do, so just bear with me here. I do want to open up in a word of prayer, just because I appreciate you guys, and I have a lot to be thankful for. And you guys okay with me opening up in prayer? Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to share the adoption process with these wonderful adoptive couples and families here. And we just give you the glory, and this is all for you. And we just pray that you speak through me and give wisdom to all of us and to me as we speak. And we just thank you for all you do for us. In Jesus' holy name, amen. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the adoption process. I'm going to start with that, and then Eric's going to be our next speaker. So I have my little steps form that anybody that's inquiring about adoption. I'm Italian, so I speak with my hands, so forgive me. I get made fun of because I do talk a lot with my hands. But anyway, so if you ask for information and I'm going to send it to you, one of the things I send is my steps. If you can see the wind's hitting it now, but it's my step sheet. So I'm going to just go down over it because I do think it's important to understand about the steps of adoption. A lot of people ask me, is it hard to adopt? And the thing is that my first assignment for every family, and you'll know if I've probably said this to you before, is don't watch Lifetime movies, please, because it's nothing like Lifetime movies. Adoption really is different, right? For those that have adopted, right? It's just nothing like that. So the process of adoption, the whole thing is it's not hard, but it's important to understand. It is important. And I make a promise to my birth moms that the families that we work with, at least at the agency I work with, are stable in every way. And that also answers the question of what's the home study like, because that's what the home study is for, is to make sure the families are stable. And that means stable emotionally, stable financially, stable in every way. I had a cute young couple try to adopt from me, and I think they were $100,000 in debt, and they were only 23. And I said, I really want to work with you, but I think, because adoption's not inexpensive, I think it's important to try to get the debt down, and then let's talk, because I don't want to put them more in debt, and that's not. So they were wonderful, and we were able to, work things out and everything, but it's important to make sure the stability is there, and if y'all have want a definition of stability, you can come see me afterwards, but we just want to make sure everything's healthy. So the process of adoption, like I said, it's not difficult. What you want to do is you want to be choosy, really. Every agency is different, and for those that have called agencies and have worked with agencies, every agency is different. So what one agency does, don't think that that's the line where everybody does the same thing, because we're all different. It's like people, we all have different personalities. So it's important to do your homework and talk to them. And if they don't talk to you and they don't return phone calls, which they should, that's a little sign, a little foreshadowing what might happen. I think every call should be answered, every email should be answered, within a very timely fashion. But, just do your homework and do some research and just see how the agency makes you feel. So research it and find an agency you like. So I'm just hypothetically, let's just say you like I call it TCA for time purposes, Texas Christian Adoptions. So with us, with me, I encourage you to make an appointment to come talk to me. My spiel, I call it the spiel, is at least a couple hours, because there's a lot of, right? There's a lot, you're not Jenny's nodding her head. There's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of things to cover, and I just want to inform and educate. So, come make an appointment with me, and I'll talk to you. If you can't, FaceTime me. I have a family who called me from Houston, and we FaceTime for 2 hours. So, and it's all free, it doesn't cost anything, so just come talk to me, and I'll tell you about how it all works. So, but there is an application fee to start with. There's a lot of paperwork. So let's just say you want to sign on. You want to look at the application. It is pretty lengthy, but there's a lot of information we're required to ask and a lot of things we need to know. So you're going to fill that out. You're going to go undergo an adoptive screening. Now there is an application fee that you pay at the beginning. Every agency is a little different, but it's probably about $2,000 to $2,500 to apply with the agency, because that's going to pay for your home study. Now some agencies are different, but at least at TCA, that's what that is. It covers your home study and any updates that needs to be done. With the application, you also have autobiographies that you write, and it doesn't have to be War and Peace. It's more like Cliff Notes. But it is important to make sure you're thorough with it. So you don't have to start your autobiographies like, well, it was a beautiful blue day, and the sun was shining. It doesn't need to be like that, but it just needs to be to the point and just, answer the questions, but be thorough. Because people like Melissa, who does home studies, needs to have information about you. So answer the questions and be thorough, because it's really a report about you and your family and your upbringing and your marriage, etc. We do ask for physicals, which means that there's a physical form also attached to the application. And if you've had a physical in the last 12 months, then your doctor can answer a lot of those questions. But if it's older and it's over a year, they might have to retest you for certain things, like do a blood test, make sure that you're healthy. But that's all part of the physical. It's all easy. We just make sure you're free of communicable diseases, etc. But it's important to have that. So, we do ask for most recent tax return form and employer paycheck, just to verify the financial stability, health insurance, references from 3 friends. We always ask that it's from friends, not from relatives. Maybe there's a little bias there, so friends it's a little bit better, a little healthier to do with friends. People that have known you for at least 10 years is always a plus, because they really know you. Copies of driver's licenses and birth certificates or current passports, a marriage certificate, divorce or death certificate if applicable, proof of current pet vaccinations. All these are really important. The thing about pets is that people forget to make sure all the pets are current on their vaccinations. That's like the one thing that's important to make sure. So get a copy from your vet, make sure it's not expired, and make sure that when it is expired, if it's coming up, make sure that you get it done, because licensing does look at that, and all the people doing the home studies also look at that. It's important to make sure everybody's current with that. So, and I have you guys do 2 photo books. See, back when I started in the business, it was scrapbooks. If y'all remember, I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but scrapbooks that was really big in the 90s. And then it was photo albums. And now we have progressed to photo books, right? Photo books. And so Shutterfly or Apple you have the ability to make a photo book for me to show at the agency. I ask for you guys to do 2 photo books, one for me to always have in my car. So if I get a last minute call from a social worker saying somebody's had a baby, she's in Burleson, can you come now? Well, I may not have time to run to the office to get that book, so I always have one with me. And a lot of times it's a nice gesture, but you can give that photo book to your birth mom as a gift, because nothing's in it, nothing revealing's in it. There's no last names in it. It's just pictures of you, and it helps her, find peace in her heart about her experience. So I also have you do something called flyers. And what a flyer is a piece of paper like this, and you can laminate it. So in case I'm at Denny's, and the birth mother has kids, and chocolate milk is spilled on the table, which has happened. It's happened before, so I'm like, laminate, note to self, laminate. So it just helps protect the paper, and also it's a way for them to take a part of you home with them. So for instance, if I meet with a sweet girl at Denny's, and I have Jenny and Marco's flyer with me and the book, and they like them, well, I don't want her to take the book home because I may not see it again, or it might get lost. And I know you guys put a lot of work and effort in these books, so but I have the flyer, and the flyer is helpful because I can give her the flyer to take home with her, so she can talk to her family and talk to her friends and say, this is the family I'm considering. I think I want to meet them. So it's a piece of you without having to have your whole book. And I can always help you with all that. This is my really quick rendition of about adoption. So forgive me for being really quick, but for those that know me, I can really talk your ear off. I mean, right? So anyway, okay, and there's also photos of your backyard, and I need a diagram of your house. I mean, there's a lot to it, but I'm trying to do a little quick overview. A blueprint of your house. Adoption agencies are licensed, like I'm licensed by the state, but we are umbrellaed under the same rules as foster care. So when I say I need a blueprint of your home, I need to know that how big that room is, and how big the hallway is, and how big everything is, because licensing is looking at that. They need to make sure that the room is big enough for a child, not the size of this table. It's a room, so it's all so it's important to make sure that the room is adequate. So, and forgive me if I'm missing anything. I'm just kind of really just going under, quickly going over this. One of the things that you do is a criminal background check. So what I do is you fill out the application and you send it to me, and then I run your criminal background check. And then what happens is the state will notify you, and when it's time for you to do your FBI check. So there's three different clearances. There's DPS, DFPS, and FBI. Now the FBI, for those that are wanting to adopt, this is important, note to self, you want to do a national FBI check. Not just Texas, but a national one. It's the one that costs, I want to say it's about $49, right, Melissa? It's about $49 to do it per person. But that's the one you need to do, because if you do the wrong one, they're going to make you turn around and do it all over again. So, but don't go do it now. I've had some families go do it early, and they had it's like putting the cart before the horse. So you want to do it only when you're asked to do it, and they'll send you an email, because I give them your email, and then they'll notify you. So once I get all the clearances, that's part of the home study, and I attach it and I give it to the social worker. One question I get asked a lot is, do I baby proof now? And the thing is that, do you have to baby proof? I mean, obviously the baby's not in your home yet. So the answer is, no, you don't technically have to, but yeah, come on in, hey. But you don't have to, but it's important to do it, because when the social worker gets there, she sees, oh, look, this drawer already has a lock on it. That's great. Okay, I can put that in home study. Because what happens if you get approved, but you don't have your house approved yet, licensing comes in and says, well, did they ever baby-proof their house? I don't know. Well, I need to know that. So it's actually, if you're really planning on adopting, it's always good to go ahead and just do it. It's easy, right? Toys R Us or Babies R Us, I think, has the department. There's a lot of departments that have a baby-proofing area. So get this stuff and just go ahead and start it, or at least show the social worker that you have it and you're still doing it. But like the pool's really important, like a sliding glass door. That child can go right through that door. So get stickers. Those little stickers you can take on and off and put them on the door, so nobody's going to run through that door. Put a lock on that door that goes out to the pool. Things like that. So it shows the social worker that you're serious. This is not, you really are ready to adopt, and it's important to you. So what happens is, once you're approved, and then I start showing your photo book to birth moms that fit the description of what you're wanting, and vice versa. So if you say, we want a baby that looks like us, but we're open to any baby. It just depends on what you're asking for. And then I'm going to show your photo book to that girl who fits what you're wanting, and vice versa. And if you don't get chosen, it's okay. Adoptions can take 6 months. It can take 18 months. It's all in God's timing. And that's what I've learned in all these years of doing adoption, is that God is faithful. And so just be patient, because that perfect match is for you. It's out there. So don't lose hope. It just happens. It's like I always talk about, it's like meeting your mate, right? You can have dates with people and it's just not right, and you think, oh, it's never going to happen. Well, finally at 45, I met my soulmate. So God is faithful, but it's in His timing and not our timing. So that's one thing I've definitely learned. So just don't ever forget that it does eventually happen. But once the birth mother picks you, then what I do is I call you and say, hey, this girl really likes you. Let me send you her information. You decide if you really want to meet her. And then if you do, I send you her information, and we'll set up the meeting, and I'll be there. I'll facilitate it, and we'll just see if there's a connection. If there's not a connection, which most time there is, but if there's not a connection, we just wait for the next match. But if there is a connection, that's okay, come on in. If there is a connection, that's awesome. And I always say, okay, and usually the meetings last about, I don't know, a couple hours, I think, really. If there's a connection, I always say, listen, y'all pray about it, think about it overnight. Let me know by noon tomorrow if you really want this match. Because I think people need to, hey, Davina, just, I think it's important to make sure this is right. If everybody likes the match, that's when I get the okay to send you the contract. Now, so far, you've only paid the application fee, which is $2,000. But once the match is made and you've approved the match with that birth mom, and the birth mom has approved the match with you, that's when the adoption fee, the placement fee, is due. Most agencies, I mean, it's not cheap to adopt, but it can be anywhere between $30,000 to $45,000 to adopt. It's expensive, and I wish it was cheaper, but Google ads are not cheap, and Yellow Page ads are not cheap, and buildings are not cheap. So all that money it all has a designated place to go toward. So for instance, TCA is $36, but there are agencies that are more, and there's some agencies that are less. But it's okay to ask the questions. What does this cover? And so like with ours or with mine, it's an all-inclusive fee. So it covers everything. It's the only thing I would ever ask for, and it also covers if, for whatever reason, the birth mother doesn't place and decides to parent the baby, it covers your next adoption. So there's like a little insurance policy in there too. So anyway, and then we just try to have meetings once a month with the birth mom to make sure everybody's still feeling comfortable with each other and with the match. And and then when she goes into labor, a lot of times she wants you there. And so it's important to know that we have to respect her rights. This is her child. We have the match, but and we know what her wishes are, but she's the one calling the shots. I always tell her she's the rock star and I'm a manager. So you just tell me where you want us, how do you want to do this? And she has the right to change the scenario of her adoption plan. So she might say, well, I want everybody in there during labor. But then once it's that time and it's labor, she's like, I don't want anybody in here during labor. And that's okay. We'll just be, captain, we'll just go wherever you want us to go. So we'll be in the waiting room or we'll be wherever she wants us, but she's calling the shots. And it is important to remember that because it's her baby, right? I mean, the only thing she's done is she's signed on, she's saying, I want to do this. But, this is a hard thing. It's a very hard thing to do, so we respect her rights. A lot of times, though, she does like the adoptive mom. A lot of girls like the adoptive mom in the labor room, and the adoptive dad and I will be in the waiting room, or I'm the paparazzi, and I take lots of pictures of just everything. For those that know me, know I'm the paparazzi, and all those pictures I make into a photo book for you and the birth mom later. So anyway, and then the hospital experience. Tell me if I'm going too fast. I'm just trying to get this going because it's already 1:30. So, but the hospital experience, it's a really neat experience, and a lot of times it's very positive. I've had nurses come in going, "Are you sure this is an adoption?" Because there's a lot of laughing going on in here. It just, the Lord blesses it. I mean, it's just a really beautiful. It can be a beautiful time. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it is. But a lot of times it is. Because everybody gets along with each other. So, so as far as the hospital experience goes, we're there. We're all there, and I do try to visit with everybody while we're there for 2 days. And a lot of times after the second day, the hospital releases the birth mom to go home. So what happens is she determines when she's ready to sign her paper. It's called the relinquishment of parental rights, which Eric will tell you a little bit more about. But once that paper is signed, it's an irrevocable document, but once she signs, we usually go home. And so the baby would go home with you if that's the plan, which it usually is. But the baby would go home with you, and I would be with the birth mom, and I would take her home, or unless she has parents there. So, and then from that point, you have a 6-month period where the state watches. They expect me to do visits, 5 visits. We call them post-placement visits, and usually I'll come to your house. I think I can maybe do FaceTime. Eric, can we do FaceTime for one of the music? Yeah, because it's still technically. I think it depends on. Yeah. So in some cases, the face-to-face visits are okay. But in some cases, it's not. Like, we'll meet for lunch, right? Or we'll go to a restaurant. But anyway, so I meet with you for 5 times. And then, because the state says that after the 6-month period, then we can finalize. And I write a report. So what happens is the birth mom relinquishes her rights to me as the agency. I now watch you and make sure there's bonding. And then what happens then is after that 6-month period, I relinquish my rights as the agency to you so that you can adopt and finalize your adoption. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. Is I'm going to watch the adoption. I'm going to come see that you're bonding, that everybody's happy, and everybody's being taken care of. And then we approve the adoption, and we're done. And then you'll get a whole new birth certificate with your name, with your last name, for the baby. So that's that's like a record for me. I mean, that's a really fast overview. But, and I'm sorry if I forgot some things, but do y'all have any questions for me that I can answer that I didn't cover? And if you're shy, you don't like to talk in front of crowds, call me, and I'm happy to meet with you or answer your questions. But if y'all have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them. Nope. Okay. Well, I'm going to give the floor to Eric. Apparently, we have to hold this close to her.
Right.
And if people ask questions,
I'll repeat the question.
awesome. I'm sorry.
All right. So my name's Eric Freeby. I'm an adoption attorney. All I do are adoptions. I'm in Fort Worth. I don't know how many I've done. Probably somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000. I used to, just a little background, I actually started out doing insurance defense. I used to represent veterinarians when they got sued. So that was always interesting because I had everything from like a breeding bull to the trailer park parrot named Cheeto that died of a heart attack. So anyways, that's what I used to do. But now all I do are adoptions. I just wanted to follow up with a couple of things. Is if you're here at 1 o'clock on a Saturday, you should not be stressed about your home study. Just looking around the room, I can tell you guys, don't let a home study scare you away from adoptions. That's usually the first question I get is, well, don't I have to do a home study? So don't let a home study scare you away from adoptions. It's paperwork, and I'm sure all you guys can handle paperwork in a few visits. The other thing is the cost of adoptions. There's a lot of things out there that can help with the cost of adoption. There's a $13,470 credit, don't quote me on that, tax credit that you can carry over from year to year that can help with that. There are grants that can help with the cost of adoption. There's things like GoFundMe, except it's a nonprofit, so anybody that donates to that gets the charitable write-off, and then that charity turns around and gives the money to you. So there's a lot of different options out there to help fund an adoption. So adoption is what we call, it's a 2-step process. First, there's the termination of parental rights, and then there's the adoption. The termination of parental rights is 90% of, well, I call it the battle, but it's not really a battle, but it's 90% of the legal work that we do. I always tell people that adoption is kind of like the icing on the cake where we get, you the official title parents and the new birth certificate with, you guys are listed on the birth certificate just as if this child was born to you. You really can't tell the difference. So on your general outline, that's kind of how I describe the process. Because the big question is, can the baby go home from the hospital with us? And absent something that I can't even think of right now, usually yes, the baby goes home from the hospital with you. You have your follow-up visits. Generally about 1 month after birth is when we go and terminate parental rights, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. But and then 6 months later, we do the adoption. what I usually tell people is don't worry a lot in the hospital about the name that she puts on the birth certificate. Don't worry about circumcision. Those are all things that can be dealt with later. Just in the hospital, you can call the baby whatever you want when you get home. I'm not real worried with what she puts on the birth certificate. I've just seen a lot of different battles with that over the year, and it's just, you just need to enjoy your time and not really worry about that. So every adoption has some degree of legal risk. And, be it we don't know who the birth father is, or birth mother's mom said something, there's always some degree of legal risk, and what we do is try to mitigate that legal risk as much as we possibly can. And there just might be an adoption that you never hear about because we just said there's just too risky, we're not going to move forward with that one. But all the cases that you hear about in the news where where there's a legal fight going on 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, those are all the cases that I know of like that. They knew that fight was coming well before it happened. So that the adoptive parents probably knew that was going to happen the day they took placement or shortly after it. In Texas, an adoption isn't subject to attack after 6 months. And that's just kind of our bar. That's the rule that we tell a lot of people. It's hard to explain a lot of the different appellate deadlines, but when it comes down to it, it's not subject to attack after 6 months. So usually, for it to get past that, there have to be legal proceedings going on well before the 6 months. So those fights that you hear are going on for years and years, and just not that it popped up 5 years later. When dealing with birth parents and termination of parental rights, you have to have two things. You have to show it's in the child's best interest, and that's usually pretty easy to do. And then you have to show grounds. And our grounds are birth mom is signed a relinquishment. This is something that she can sign when the baby's at least 48 hours old. It's usually what she signs in the hospital right around discharge. Is generally how it works. When she signs it, it's irrevocable if you're dealing with an adoption agency. I mean, she can't take it back except for fraud, duress, coercion, something like someone was putting a gun to her head saying sign or else. Now, with an independent adoption, it's a little bit different, where an agency's not involved. With an independent adoption, they are revocable. So there's two types, and this gets kind of confusing. There's the 10-day, which she can revoke for 10 days, so she can change her mind for up to 10 days after she signs it, and then it's irrevocable. Then there's the 60-day, which is irrevocable. It's irrevocable, so she can't take it back or undo it for 60 days. And then on the 61st day, she can undo it. So have I thoroughly confused you guys? I'm sorry. So there's one type that she can take away for the beginning period, then she can't, and the other type is the opposite. She can't take it back, but then she can. So that's the nice part about an agency adoption, is when she signs right then, it's irrevocable. And kind of the thought behind that is she's had all of the counseling and everything that comes along with being a part of an agency adoption. And when she signs, I always get, she's not going to sign. If the baby was born at 5:30 in the morning, I'm not going to wake her up at 5:30 in the morning and say it's time to sign. It's really just when she's ready to sign. I'm not going to have her sign on holidays or things like that. But then generally after she signs, the baby is released to you guys. The other big difference with an independent versus an agency adoption is in an agency adoption, you can pay living expenses. So, rent, food, electric bill, cell phone, things like that. With an independent adoption, you can only pay for counseling, legal, and medical fees. Anything else is a felony for everybody, meaning the attorney, the birth parent, the adoptive parent. So I like to stay as far away from that. I don't think I'd do well in jail. There's a case out of, I think it might have been out of Dallas, but it's a lot, you can tell by the facts of it. It was a long time ago where adoptive parents bought birth parents a carton of cigarettes and some maternity clothes. and I believe they went after them, for a felony for, it's called we call it the baby swelling statute, but essentially giving her something other than counseling, legal, and medical fees. So you just have to be really careful when dealing with an independent adoption that you don't cross that line. So that's kind of how we deal with birth mothers. Birth mothers, between mothers and fathers, the birth mothers are generally, as me as a lawyer, the easiest part to deal with. Birth fathers, every birth father is different. There's no cookie cutter legal explanation for how we deal with birth fathers. Now, if she's married at the time of conception or birth, then generally that means he's a legal father. And if he's a legal father, he has to sign a relinquishment, just like birth mother, and he has to wait 2 days after birth. Sometimes there's ladies that said, well, I was married 5 years ago, I haven't seen him since. And a lot of times they just don't have money to get a divorce. And we've got to track Joe Blow down, and the last she knows he was in North Carolina. Or we've even found out that she was divorced and she never knew it. But so there's ways that we deal with legal fathers that we can't find. We can either, if we can find them but they don't cooperate, then we can serve them, or we can publish on them, or you publish a notice in the newspaper, and if they don't answer in so many days, and the court appoints an attorney to find them, then we can terminate rights. So usually those guys are what we call husbands, not the father. So usually they're long gone. Usually if the birth mother's married and she's placing for adoption and she's in a relationship with her husband, he's real cooperative. It's usually the husband, not the father, that gives us some heartache. The other type of birth father, you have your legal father, then you have your alleged father. The alleged fathers, there's several ways to deal with them, but one is they can sign a waiver of interest that they can sign at any time, and it's irrevocable. They can't take it back or undo it. So they can sign during the first trimester and we're done with them and don't have to worry about it. Now, a lot of times we can't always get these guys to cooperate. Or a birth mother might say it was a one-night stand and I have no idea who it was. Or I'm just not going to tell you who it was. In that case, we would use the paternity registry. Now, what the paternity registry is you're a guy and you're with a woman, you're on notice that you may have a baby. And if you want to parent that child, you have to register with this paternity registry within 31 days after birth. If you don't, your rights can be terminated without notice to you. So what we do is, on the 32nd day after birth, we request that this registry be searched and a certificate comes back and almost always says no one has registered. And then we go to court and terminate parental rights. When we go to court, we terminate everybody's parental rights at once, usually somewhere between the 33rd, 40th day after birth, just depending when we can get into court. And when we terminate parental rights, we appoint the agency managing conservator. It's kind of like guardian. And then that's kind of where the agency comes in and starts, they might have already done it before, doing those follow-up visits before they get to the adoption. Now, in the paternity registry, it's not for every case, especially when we're dealing with older children. It's where I run into problems with the registry is where there's a child out there that's already in a relationship with birth parents or its biological grandparents. Then in that case, the registry's probably not going to be a good option for us, but we really just look at it on a case-by-case basis. But generally for your one-night stands or guys that say, leave me alone, I don't want any contact, it would be a paternity registry case. So in all the terminations I've done, I don't even know how many that would be, a lot. I've had 4 guys register. And of the 4 that registered, 2 of them, their mothers did it. So we got it taken away, and one of them changed his mind. So, and the one guy that did register that didn't work out, we told you that we knew before placement that was, so we never did placement. We placed the baby in a transitional care home because we knew there was this coming. So to protect the family, we put the baby in a transitional care home until we figured out what he was going to do. So to say it's 1 in 1,000, it's probably close to somewhere like 1 in 1,000, and usually we know what's going to happen beforehand. So usually, unless the birth mother's married, we have to search the paternity registry in every case, and we search it in every case anyhow, just because I've been lied to before, and I don't always trust what they tell me about their social life sometimes. So just to dot all my I's and cross all my T's, we always wait and search the paternity registry. So generally, we terminate rights down the road, usually about between that 32nd and 40-day mark. So when I go to court to terminate parental rights, usually the only person that would be there with me is, sometimes it's just me, sometimes it's an agency caseworker, and that's usually it. Birth parents don't go to court. What I typically tell birth parents is once you sign, you're done from a legal perspective. There's nothing else that you have to do. So I really don't involve them in the legal part if I can help it. The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know how often you run into this, is ICPC. So it's the Interstate Compact on the Placement of Children. And what that is if you're adopting outside of Texas, then you would have to clear the ICPC office in the state you're adopting from and in Texas. And what that practically means to you is you need to be prepared to stay in a hotel room with a newborn in the state of birth for about 10 days. Typically it's not, and when I say 10 days, I mean 10 business days, so about 2 weeks. Typically it doesn't take that long, but what we have to do is submit a mountain of paperwork to this ICPC office, and then they clear it, mail it to Texas, Texas looks at it, clears it, and then, between emails and phone calls, tell you guys it's safe to go, or that you can go ahead and go home. We have to submit your home study, medical records, background checks. It's a lot, but that's why it sometimes takes a little while. So, any of y'all have any questions about kind of the termination of parental right process? Yes, sir.
So, if they're married, but the husband is not the father, is he still being the father because they're married?
Yeah, he's still deemed a father because of marriage. He's a legal father. He's not a biological father, but unless we can prove he's not a biological father in court, we've got to get him to sign or serve him. And usually it's a lot easier to serve him than to get the guy to submit to a DNA test. So, but yeah, he's a legal father, so we still have to deal with him.
Eric, I do have a question that might be pertinent to somebody in here. But so if we have a birth mom who is separated from her husband, she's married, but she's separated, but her boyfriend is the father. I know in some cases, if we prove with a court-approved DNA test that the boyfriend is the father, we were able to not need the signature of the husband. Is that still true, or do we still want to try to do that? Because in some cases,
we would still want to try and sign or serve just in case, there's some instances where it's just dangerous to contact a husband. But usually in that case, we just go talk to the judge and figure out what he'll let us do. If we do have to serve or publish on a guy, it can take a little longer to terminate parental rights, but the relinquishment birth mother signs irrevocable, so we've got some time to deal with them and track them down.
But birth fathers usually aren't, like a lot of people come into adoption thinking that they need to be worried about a birth father, and you don't. Like, don't let that stop you from adopting, because it's not that bad.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had a birth father contest an adoption this year. Out of 100 terminations, I don't think I've seen a birth father have an issue. And usually, like we know it. Usually, if there is going to be an issue, we know about it beforehand, and we talk about it with you. Make sure you're comfortable accepting that legal risk. So it's not very rarely do guys just pop up out of thin air that we didn't know about. So on the adoption side, that's the fun part. On the adoption side is usually we go to court as close to the 6-month mark as we can, because the child has to be in your home for 6 months before the court can finalize the adoption. And that's the part where you bring all your friends and families and people to take pictures, and the kids usually go up and sit on the bench with the judge, and there's stuffed animals and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the really fun part, and that's where we get the new birth certificate and things like that. think that was kind of what we covered. Unless you guys have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned earlier about, you know, it could be illegal if you agree with the decision to pay for certain expenses. Is it common for an adoption to be paying certain, like, expenses for the birth mother? Is that a common
We
thing?
can cover the 5 basics.
Okay.
Like the things we're allowed to cover, which is, sorry.
Right, so we can cover the things that we're allowed to cover is rent, food, clothes, utility bill, phone bill, and transportation. But let me clarify transportation. I'm not paying a car note, but I can give them gas money, from the doctor or to come see me. Or Medicaid will pay, actually, if they have Medicaid will actually have a taxi service that'll take them to the doctor. So, so those are the 5 things I'm allowed to cover, but I'm not allowed to get them like a new TV. I'm not allowed to, but I can help them with the basics. As long as I have, I have to have the paperwork for it. Like if I'm paying rent, I need the copy of the lease.
And is that something that you would fund in addition to the 36?
No,
Is that
it's
how
all
that's
inclusive.
part of- okay.
It's all
That's
inclusive,
just
yeah.
management.
So that 30,
Okay.
so the 36 is the only thing, aside from the 2,000 application fee, the 36 is the only thing you will ever pay. Aside from the attorney's fee, which would be Eric's fee, like to finalize, you pay him directly at the very end of your adoption, and that's about $1,000-ish, right?
Yeah.
So you're at the end of your adoption journey, you're going to spend about 39. But in that 36, there's a cushion in there in case she decides to parent. It pays for that money will pay for your next adoption. So you're not gonna pay me again. That's and usually I try to do my best to match you with a girl who's really has her heart set like this is what she's gonna do, because I don't want to match you with a girl who's on the fence and really doesn't know yet, because that's not fair to you. I always say this to my families, like, y'all are my babies. Like, I make sure that y'all are okay. I make sure my birth moms are okay. I make sure everybody is okay and at peace with their decision before I match them, because if they're not at peace, there's no sense in matching, because that just doesn't make sense. I want to make sure. Oh,
Can you talk to us about what that looks like, how you deal with the birth mom, what type of counseling, how long you spend together, like,
Sure.
how do you know she's ready?
sure. Well, I do a lot. I'm actually a psychotherapist by education. So for those birth moms that know me, I do a lot of counseling. Do you want me to stand? Does it matter? Is it easier to stand? So I do a lot of counseling with my birth moms. I'm kind of like their big sis in a way, like or aunt. I guess I'm too old to be a big sis. Okay, an aunt. I was kind of hoping to still be a big sis. But I'm like a good friend of theirs, and I just spend time with them. It's not to pressure them. I tell them all the time, I'm not here to pressure you. And I don't. This might sound funny, but it makes sense. I'm not here. I don't care if you place or don't place. I want you to have peace in your heart. I'm here to help you if you decide this is right for you and your baby. Yeah. It's true, right, Joy? I mean, like, I'm not here, because the whole thing is my goal is to make sure my girls walk away from this is their journey with peace in their heart, and know that the Lord has blessed them, and hey, Arian, you guys can sit over here. This is one of my panel speakers. So, hey, I have your thing right here. Hey, Arian, would you give this to her? Thank you. So anyway, so I spend a ton of time with my girls, and some girls, like Arian, come sit over here. Arian, how long have I known you? 14 years. Just like Joy and I. So we do a lot of counseling, don't we? Oh, yeah. So you want to sit there? Okay. This is the panel is over here on the first row. So hey, girl. So yes, I do a ton of counseling, because it's important. Now, I don't push myself on them either. So if a girl's like, I'll say, hey, you want to go get lunch? You want to get coffee? Are you doing okay? If you need to go get clothes, you want to go get clothes? If she says no, I'm going to respect that, because some people just don't want it. I'm too close to the situation, but I always offer counseling. And here's the other thing is, if they don't want to see me, I offer 5 sessions of professional counseling with somebody else. So 5 sessions with Catherine Burton, who's wonderful in South Lake. She's a fabulous counselor. Or if they have somebody they love and they've already been going to, I'll pay for 5 sessions.
But if everything's going well with you,
Uh-huh.
do you just do double check with someone else just to make sure? I mean, it is such a decision.
Well, you mean to make sure that there are people that, I've had birth moms whose mother and I are close, because we befriend a lot of people, because they come to to the meeting, and you know, so I get to know the moms sometimes. And they'll reach out to me. Like I had recently a girl who said, you know, she's having some issues, and I reached out to her immediately and said, okay, what can I do? We paid for counseling. So there was a lot of people around that person to double check. And at the hospital, the job of the social worker, and you'll learn this if once you're at the hospital, the job of the social worker is to make sure nobody's pressuring the birth mom and that she's at peace with her decision. She kicks everybody out. She will come in by herself, and sometimes it's a he, but mostly it's a she, and she will just say, how do you feel about this adoption? Are you okay? Is anybody pressuring you? And if she's changing her mind, it's okay. This is her baby. We're not here to take her baby. We're here that she finds peace in her heart. And I've had girls who loved their family, but they didn't realize how much they were going to love their baby. And that's okay. And we all understand the risk. And the adoptive family loves her, are they heartbroken? Of course. But they don't want to take a child when the birth mom is not ready to place or doesn't have that desire or heart anymore to do that. They understand the pain.
And then do you provide anything after?
Oh, yeah.
I
We do. Yes. I have, as you can see, I'm friends with my birth moms for years after. We do a lot of counseling. I'm there for as long as they need me. It could be the rest of their life. And for those that know me know that's pretty much true. I talk a lot with my birth moms and my adopted families. You kind of just make a friend for life if you want me in your life. I'm not going to push myself on you, but I'm always there to be your cheerleader. I also have a birth mom support group that meets between every 4 weeks and every 6 weeks. I let the group decide when the next meeting is. And so that's there as a group of girls to support the decision to adopt with other girls who have gone down that road. So, for instance, Joy is one of my old birth moms, and now she's getting her, it's a cool story too. Sometimes girls who go into the experience of adoption, and the experience has touched their heart, and all of a sudden they have that, God has given them that aha moment of, this is what I need to do. This is my calling. And I've had several girls who do this, and they get their degree in social work. And so Joy is getting her degree in social work, and she's going to actually, God willing, work for me to be a birth mother counselor who her job will be to work with birth mothers. And to me, what better counselor is to have is somebody who's gone down that road. You know, when Joy says to that birth mom, I know what you're going through. She really does know what she's going through. And so I think there's a respect that birth mother will have toward Joy because she does understand what she's going through. So I hope that answers your question. So I took your mic.
No, you're fine. You can have it. I will say that fee structure is nice, that you don't have, people coming back to you saying, well, we need this much more for rent, we need this much more for for the electric bill. It is nice that it's all just there in one lump. Yes, it's a lot easier. So
Yeah.
I think that's it. Okay.
Do y'all have any more questions for Eric?
Yes, sir.
Eric, a quick one. Is there any legalities associated with the type of adoption, open adoption, semi-open adoption? Is there any legalities tied in with that at all?
So in Texas, post-adoption contact isn't legally enforceable. Meaning if you have an agreement for so many pictures or letters or something like that and you as adoptive parents don't send them, then birth mother can't sue you to make you do it. I guess sue you for specific performance to make you do it. She may be able to sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress or something like that, but that would be a lot harder. But she can't sue you to make you specifically do that. And you can't, she can't sign an agreement a relinquishment based on the promise for post-adoption contact. So it really is a promise that you're just going to do what you say you're going to do. I don't know of an agency in Texas that's going to work with birth parent or adoptive parents that they don't think are going to, they'll do and send the letters or whatever it is to birth parents. Because agencies really do see and protect birth parents just like they do adoptive parents, and they really, protect all sides. All right.
And just, this might be just a footnote, but what we try to do with TCA is I have you create what we call a Shutterfly account. And for the newer families, it's a Shutterfly account.
or the old system, which is like what Kristen and I do, she texts me new pictures and an update, and I forward that on to her, to Jennifer. But the system today is the Shutterfly account, which is, I think, so much easier. So you would upload pictures. So it could be John and Lisa at Shutterfly.com, and you create it, and what you do is you upload pictures, and then they can write to you write to each other back and forth. So there's a communication, but they don't know your last name. Like, there's still some confidentiality, but you have a way of communicating. Because I assured my girls that I asked the parents to send pictures for 18 years. By the time the child's 6, it's usually then once a year, but it's for 18 years. But it's so easy on Shutterfly because you can write back and forth to each other, and it doesn't have to be lengthy. Then every time you get an update, your email, hey, this person has, and you have a response, and you can write back and forth to each other. So.
All right. Yes.
Audrey, from the time the girl is pregnant, to the time that she gives birth, what do you typically match them with birthday? How far along are we?
Oh, okay. That's a great question, Joel. So usually what happens is girls sign on with me, they're usually between, now this is not every case, but a lot of times they're between 4 months and 7 months along. So I try to match them when they're about 7 months. And the reason I do that, it's kind of a rule of thumb. It doesn't mean every adoption is like a person. Every person has a different personality. But I try to wait until they're at least 7 months because I want them to feel and experience the pregnancy. Because if I match them too early and all of a sudden they feel the baby, if I match them at 2 months and at 6 months they start, maybe the baby kicked, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Well, that's not fair to match them without them really knowing. I want them to really know. And so it's really just in all fairness to them so they really understand what they're doing. And it gives them time to think about this huge decision. So I try to match them between 4 and 7 months. I mean, mostly it's more towards 7. I have had girls that come on and say, I need a bond with my family early. And I'm doing this. This is the, yeah.
I made my decision at 3 months and had already chosen my family by 5.
Yeah. See, so Joy matched at 3 months, and you met them and were matched by 5, and that happens too. I mean, here's the thing: every adoption is personalized. That's the way it should be. If I have a birth mom that says I want a closed adoption, I will respect that and give her a closed. But I will get pictures for 18 years in case at 12 years later she wants her pictures. I think it's still important because she may change her mind and she may want to see it. She has to have that piece, that closure. And the way I explain it is every time you send a picture and you send an update, when you do an adoption, and the girls can say this, there's a hole in your heart. And every time you send an update and a picture, it's like a needle and thread, and you're sewing that hole closed. It just helps the healing process. So it's important to always be good about sending your pictures, because girls wait. They know when you're supposed to send them. So you always want to make sure you send them when it's time to do that. But so each adoption really is different, right? Like Davina, who's one of my panel, my birth moms that's on the panel, she'll come down here when it's kind of time to speak. But when were you matched? So you guys, how far along were you when you got matched?
Well, like Joy, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I immediately found Andrea. And then I think I was about 5 or 6 months when I met my adoptive parents.
Yeah. So for some girls, it's important, right? To me, it's important to be matched, to have that connection with the family, because they want to know, they need that piece. So does that answer y'all's question about it? So, okay, so I'm going to hand the mic to Lori. I'm sorry, yes.
So in your brochure, you talk about placing newborns and children after 3 years.
Yes.
So you were talking a lot about newborns. So
Well, I'm licensed. That's a good question. So I'm licensed for children up to 3 years old, but the majority of the adoptions I do are girls that are pregnant and they want to go ahead and do the adoption. So the majority of the cases I work with are going to be unborn. They're not born yet. Now, in the cases where I have placed older children, 6 month, a few 6-month-old babies. I've done sibling sets. I can do a sibling set if I have a sibling that's still under 3, and the older brother. I did a set of siblings where the little girl was 2, but the brother was 5. But because I'm licensed up to 3 and their siblings are doing one adoption, I would never separate them, like with twins, I would never separate twins, and that's one of your questions too. But, and the fee's not double, because a lot of people ask me that. But I always keep the siblings together, but because one's under 3, I can do that adoption. And so, but there is a risk with older kids, and for those that know adoptions, like Melissa, who knows a lot about adoptions too, there's always a risk with older children because there's an established relationship with somebody in the family, and when there's an established relationship, that family member might try to fight for the baby, which is understandable because they're the ones who's babysat that baby for the last year. And they're not okay with this, and they might hire an attorney to fight for the baby. So it's riskier to actually adopt an older child, but it's not as risky if it's a newborn because you can't bond with a child that's not born yet. So it is a little bit less risky to do an unborn, like to be matched with a newborn. So I don't know if that answers your question. It does. Okay, so I'm going to give the mic to Lori. And this is a special treat. I love Lori. So Lori, I'll let Lori introduce herself, but she's a plethora of information. So I'm going to hand you the mic.
Thank you. Tell me how long you want me to go.
Okay, for about 30 minutes. And then people might have questions. Is that okay?
Yes. So, hello. I am a genetic counselor. I'm located at the University of North Texas. So if any of you live close enough and you ever want to come up to my office, we're totally a free public health service. We're part of OTIS, which is the National Organization of Teratology Information Specialists. So what we do is we talk to anyone, whether you're planning a pregnancy, you're an expectant mom, you're a woman who's breastfeeding, you're anywhere in the adoption process. So we counsel about exposures during pregnancy and breastfeeding that might harm the unborn baby or breastfeeding the baby who's already born. So it could be anything like a person who's sick, she has diabetes or she has severe asthma or rheumatoid arthritis. It can obviously be anything that she takes during her pregnancy, whether it be smoking, illegal drugs, prescription medications, or so on. And then again with the breastfeeding. Now, I have a lot more slides on here than I can actually get through, so some of them I may just go through or go past without really saying very much. And as Andrea said, I welcome questions because I want to talk about what you want to know. So go ahead and ask me questions as we go along. So, arrows maybe? No. You think, well, there's this maybe?
Computer says no. Okay.
Okay. Oh, well, this little button here. Let's try this. No. So we'll get that going in just a minute. I do have many, many years of experience. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I'm an adoptive mom myself. We have a birth child who just turned 19 this week, so my daughter's 19. And then afterwards we weren't able to have any more, so we decided to adopt, and we actually went through CPS. And we got our first son when he was 9.5 months, and Sean is now 14.5. Actually, he's in this next picture that's going to come up when he was quite a bit younger. And then 2 years after we got Sean, we got a letter in the mail from the state that honestly was about this long. And it said, our records show that you have the sibling, there's been a new baby born. It didn't even say if it was a boy or girl. We didn't open the mail until after 5 that night, so we couldn't even call till the next day and find out if it was a boy or girl. It's a boy, same birth parents, which is wonderful. When we got the letter, he was 2 months old, but we were no longer licensed because we had our daughter and our son, and we were done. That was, we had our family. But of course, you can't ever, at least we felt you could never turn away a sibling. So we took Shane by the time we got everything, re-licensed, and we didn't have to do courses or classes again, but we had to do the home study again. We had to sort of go through some of the process again. And then we got Shane when he was almost 4 months old. He was a week shy of 4 months. And he just turned 12 last week. So they're 12 and 14 and a half now. And we did have a semi-open relationship in the sense that we did the letters and we did the pictures and all. But then we moved and they moved, and we've lost track. And at that point, our boys were 4 and 6.5. And not really, they've known from the time they knew what adoption was that they've been adopted. And they had not been interested in finding and reestablishing any type of contact until just this summer. So Sean just told me about 2 weeks ago, you know, Mom, do you think you could spend some time this summer and we could maybe see if we could find our birth parents again? I said, sure, honey. Although I have a non-existent filing system, so I'm going to have to dig through lots of things. But I am you know, we have all the information on them. Although I remember soon after we moved and they moved and I realized that we weren't sharing pictures anymore, I did have the grandma's and the great-grandma's address. That was their address at that time, and I mailed letters to them too and heard nothing back. Well, thank you. So, you know, we think it was a Dallas family, and we're hoping, and the last we heard from them, they were still together, so it shouldn't be that hard to relocate to find them again. So we're going to see where that journey takes us. So this one with all the hair and that little guy second from your, I guess that's your left, is Sean, but that was quite a few years ago. He is now, as I said, 14 and a half. So this process, obviously, we're working with families, with kids. I just went the wrong way. Let's try this again. Here we go. So the main concern that most people have with exposures is going to be birth defects. That's the question we get all the time. You know, my birth mom was using a lot of cocaine. She was drinking a lot of alcohol. There was a lot of methamphetamines. Are there going to be birth defects? And what we always need you to understand is birth defects can happen to all of us. At the time that any of us were born, the chance that we would have a birth defect is 3 to 5%. So unfortunately, it's just so hard to go from an egg and a sperm to a perfect baby that 3 to 5 of us are born with a structural birth defect. And we can't do anything about that. You know, it's either genetic or something to do with the mom's maternal health conditions. There's nothing we can do about this group of birth defects. But the birth defects and the developmental disabilities that I deal with are the ones that can be prevented. So we can either educate birth mommies, they can stop using whatever the substance is, they can maybe change the medication, get on a different anticonvulsant, for instance, for their seizures. So sometimes we can make changes where we actually reduce the chance for birth defects and learning problems. And that's what our field is all about, is trying to reduce that risk. Now sometimes they can't make a change. You know, maybe they have bipolar depression, they have to take their lithium. There's nothing we can do about that small heart defect risk. So sometimes it's more beneficial to the mom, the birth mom, to take what she's taking than it is to, you know, she has to do it. So the word teratogen is sort of a word that you wouldn't hear too much until you're talking to somebody like me, but it does mean anything, any exposure that could cause a birth defect or a developmental problem to the exposed baby. So it's sort of a complicated word, and that's actually why we've changed our name. So we were always Teratogen Services, and now officially we're Mother to Baby. If you look, Otis still works, the Texas Teratogen Service still works, but I'm now Mother to Baby North Texas because it's a much more friendly name, and it sort of tells you what goes in the mother makes a difference to the baby. So Mother to Baby is our public name right now. Our website is mothertobaby.org, Mother, T-O-B-A-B-Y, mother2baby.org. We have a wonderful website with a couple hundred fact sheets. So if you have questions, for instance, about how much the birth mom is smoking, you don't remember what I said, or you don't want to call me, although you're always welcome to call me, just go to the website and look it up. Again, we have a couple hundred fact sheets. Now the timing, I'm not going to spend too much on the timing of the exposure. This sort of goes into more about what I do and what the healthcare providers involved have to know. But depending on when the mommy did whatever she did, it's going to make a difference. So if her exposure occurred in the first month, we're mostly worried about miscarriage. That's going to be long before most of you are involved. And what this busy slide shows you is just that depending on when the exposure occurs, it might be miscarriage early on, it might be birth defect in the middle, and it might be learning problem later on. So in weeks, so your birth defect risk again is only the first trimester, and then in the second and third trimester, or weeks 13 to 40, we're worried about learning problems and growth issues. So a good example might be cocaine. She used cocaine in month 2. So we're going to give you a slight increased risk for birth defects, depending on how often she used, heart defects and limb defects specifically. But maybe she didn't use in the first trimester. She didn't use until the second trimester. Then we're going to be worried about learning problems, and if she continues to use, about growth issues, early delivery, and so on. So depending on when she delivers, it's going to make a difference. And when I'm making an assessment, Andrea and many other adoption agencies talk to me often before they talk to you. So they get a birth mommy in, and we have to ask all these kind of questions. You know, what was she taking? How much was she taking? When did she take it in the pregnancy? What about her genetic background? So your adoption specialist that you work with is going to do a really good job of getting 2 or 3 generations of health and genetic history. So you're going to know about great-grandma had bipolar, Uncle Joe was schizophrenic. You're going to know all of that. And we're going to be able to put all that information together to give you a risk estimate. So we're going to be able to give you a risk estimate. For instance, bipolar. Bipolar depression happens to 1 in 100 of us. But if you've got a family history of it, that can go up. And depending on who's affected, it's going to depend on how much that might go up. So we're going to ask all of these questions. And it could be anything that she's exposed to that might be a hazard to her baby that's developing inside of her. So it might be an infectious agent. She gets chickenpox. She gets cytomegalovirus. She gets syphilis. So anything that she picks up during the pregnancy could go to the baby. We're also worried, of course, about alcohol. Drugs might be prescription. They might be over the counter. For instance, aspirin. We don't want aspirin. Aspirin's a blood thinner. And then, of course, they can be illegal drugs, which is what you all worry about. Chemicals in her diet, chemicals in her environment, or maternal factors, which we already talked about. She might be sick. She might be obese, too. Obesity is considered to be 100 or more pounds overweight. So it's not just your person who's a little bit overweight. It's somebody who's quite large, and that's going to give the pregnancy more risk. So these are some of the different things. And again, we don't have as much time today. Our website does deal with everything. If you have more questions, and you're always welcome to call me. My number will be at the end. Methamphetamine use is something that is pretty common. So we do get a lot of questions about meth use. It can be anywhere from somebody who went to a party and she took 1 ecstasy pill, which would have very, very little risk, all the way to somebody who's using on a daily basis. So it's really important not to really panic and jump to the conclusion, because maybe she only used it once or twice or 3 times, and I'm going to tell you that the risk is really small, 1% or less. So lots of times in my world, I'm talking about really tiny numbers. Even with cocaine, go back to cocaine for a minute. If she's using cocaine, let's say, once or twice a month in the first trimester, your risk for a heart defect is only increased by 1%. So lots of times our numbers are quite small, and as a genetic counselor, I like to turn that around. So maybe you have a 1% chance that the baby's going to have a heart defect or a cleft palate or a spina bifida, but you have a 99% chance it's not going to happen. And most of us are going to do most things if I tell you there's a 99% chance it's going to work. So that's really important to remember. And the reason that we panic a lot about illegal drugs is it's probably something that, you know, maybe wasn't in your world and you don't know a lot about it. So when you hear heroin or cocaine or methamphetamines, it scares you. Or possibly you've had a bad experience with someone with schizophrenia or bipolar, so that scares you. And I always tell everybody, as I'm sure Andrea does, that, you know, there's a family for every baby and a baby for every family. So if one family isn't a great match for you, maybe because grandma has bipolar or grandpa has schizophrenia and that's not something you feel you can deal with, somebody else will be fine with that. Or the same thing, maybe the person used methamphetamines the whole pregnancy and that scares you, but another family will say, you know, I can deal with that learning problem risk. So we always want you to match with the person you feel the most comfortable with. Fetal alcohol syndrome, I want to mention, but I don't want to dwell on it, because I have to tell you, even though it's relatively common, it's not really common in our adoption world. So the birth mommies who are with Andrea are not likely to be drinking enough to be in the fetal alcohol risk. It does happen, but and I don't know if you can tell me, have you had any? Right, so she's had 2 in 24 years. And I work with a lot of adoption agencies, and we just don't get very many. Now, it's not that those alcoholic mommies aren't out there, because they are, but they're not working with an agency or an adoption specialist to place their babies. And even independently, they're not calling me, because I have an 800 number, obviously free service that anybody can call, but it's not likely. Now, there's a few. I get, for instance, a few bartenders. You don't think about this, and I've never been a bartender. Maybe some of you have. Have you? So apparently you can drink, or your customers, at least some of them tell me.
It depends on what kind of club, or it's more like a club than it would be like a regular.
And a customer can buy you a drink. Right, and so I've had bartenders who have become pregnant and did not think they were going to get pregnant, so they didn't do this on purpose. They didn't go out to say, hey, I'm going to have 5 or 6 drinks a night. But they became pregnant, and on the nights they were working, they might have had 4, 5, or 6 drinks a night. So now you're in this category where you were drinking enough that you might be at risk for fetal alcohol syndrome. Fetal alcohol syndrome is very specific. You've got to meet all of these criteria, and you guys don't need to remember the criteria. That's for me. But the point of the criteria is for you to see that there's a lot of, I mean, you have to meet all of these. And I just talked to a prospective family about a week ago. The baby boy had been born. He was 2 days old. He was wonderful. APGAR scores were great. Everything was amazing. Birth mommy had drank enough to be in this risk, but the baby didn't meet the criteria. His head wasn't small. His body wasn't small. He didn't have the facial features. He did not have FAS. And I had to say that about 10 times. The daddy was like, so FAS isn't going to pop up. No, it's not there now. It's not going to happen later. So he doesn't have FAS, and we just don't know yet. No. Now, that's not to mean he might not have alcohol-related learning problems. We can't rule that out. But we can rule fetal alcohol syndrome out if all of these things are not there. So if those facial features aren't there, the small head size, the small body size, it can't be FAS, and it's not going to appear later. But he might have learning problems down the road, or she might have learning problems down the road that we can't possibly know about now. But that's true with any of us, because the chance that any of us can have learning problems without any exposures is 10% to start with. So you and I were born with that same 10% risk that everybody is. Then on top of it, that's where I add my risk. And let's say somebody's drinking 4 drinks every other weekend throughout the pregnancy, I'm going to give you approximately another 10 to 15% increased risk for learning problems. So sometimes I'm going to double those population background risks. Sometimes it might be bigger. Let's say if you had somebody who used lots of cocaine, it might be up to 30%. But again, your addicts are not likely to be calling me or to be placing for adoption. And if you have less alcohol, usually you're in the risk for learning problems. So the ones that you guys are going to be dealing with might be a birth mommy who had 2 to 3 drinks now and then before she knew she was pregnant. Maybe she kept up 2 to 3 drinks now and then. Birth defects are not possible at that lower level of alcohol use, but learning problems are. So that's what's really important to know, that depending on her exposure, I might give you a couple percentages, 2, 3, 4, 5%. I might say 10% or 15%. And it's always going to be our best educated assessment based on the information we have. And obviously the information we have is what the birth mommy gave. And we always assume that our birth mommies are telling the truth. We realize that anybody might not be. But we know that the birth mommies, they want the very best placement for their kiddo, and they're going to do the best they can to tell the truth. So we always go with what they told us. So cocaine, I've already talked about a little bit. If you have too much of anything, what happens is you start to increase the risk for miscarriage, birth defects, and learning problems. And that's going to be true with cocaine too. But the risk, if they're only dabbling in it, they tried it once or twice before they knew they were pregnant, is always going to be single digit. Marijuana and cigarettes. This is probably one of my most common inquiries because cigarettes are legal and marijuana is so commonly used. And I always say that smoking is smoking. And the main thing we see from too much smoking is low birth weight. We know that cigarette smoking and/or marijuana smoking is the greatest cause of low birth weight babies. So low birth weight's out there. It's often caused by smoking. We do see other problems. If you're a heavy smoker, meaning a pack or more a day, we can see a smaller baby who's born early. But the only birth defect we've seen with heavy smoking is the cleft lip, cleft palate. And that only happens in 1 out of 100 kiddos. So you still got your 99% chance it's not going to happen. So smoking with or without a little marijuana doesn't really have too many risks. Again, asthma, allergies, smaller baby who's born a little bit early. Now, heavy marijuana is different. It's not, I'm not usually going to get the heavy marijuana user, but if you do, we can't rule out learning problems and even a 1 or 2% risk for other birth defects. Inhalants, not real common, but just something to be aware of. If there's a substance you can get high on, people know it and they do it. If it's a legal substance, such as all of these, you know, the difference is teenagers can't as easily get alcohol as they can get some of these things. And so they can get high. So it's just something to be aware of. It can increase learning problem risk if it's used a lot. Accutane, I'm going to just skip over. It's really not something you guys are going to be involved with a lot, but it is a prescription medication for severe acne that does have a lot of risk if it's used during pregnancy. Just something to keep in the back of your mind, but you're not going to run into it much. Antidepressants, you are going to run into a lot. Antidepressants are very common because 10% of everybody, of all of us, have clinical depression or clinical anxiety. So most people who have clinical depression or clinical anxiety do take meds. There's not a lot of risk from these meds. That's the take-home message. No known increased risk for major birth defects from antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. Usually mommy has to use them. We would prefer that she be on her medication than have uncontrolled anxiety and depression. You can have a little early delivery, and about 40% of these kiddos have to go through what is usually mild and always temporary withdrawal. So it may start on day 2. It may be things like agitation, irritability, crankiness, trouble sleeping, trouble eating, but it usually only lasts 2 to 4 weeks. Doesn't usually require medication treatment or an extended hospital stay. So 9 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 times, it's going to benefit the woman to stay on her medication more than these potential tiny risks. So don't panic if there's Paxil or Prozac or any of these antidepressants. We already briefly talked about maternal infections, and it's just enough to know that if she got the infection during the pregnancy, there can be a risk to the baby. If she had the infection prior to the pregnancy, there's very little, 1% or less risk to the baby. Toxoplasmosis is something that you can pick up eating raw or undercooked meat or in your cat litter box. So just something to keep in mind. Again, if she was infected prior to the pregnancy, it's not going to be a known risk or a very small, less than 1% risk. These are some of the things that I'm always going to be asking when I'm talking to the birth families. Your counselors are going to be asking, and your social workers are going to be asking these same kind of questions. Obesity, diabetes, asthma, attention deficit hyperactivity. I do want to touch on that because it's so common. My youngest has ADD. He's also got dyslexia, but he's got ADD. 6 to 10% of all kids, twice as many boys as girls, have ADD or ADHD. Usually they're, it has nothing to do with intelligence, bright, normal little kids that might be hyperactive, or in my case of Shane, his is mostly focus and inattention. I mean, seriously, you can hardly hold a whole conversation without him going, oh yeah, wait, but by the moment, he just changes the topic, and it's like, wait a minute, I was just in the middle of my sentence. Oh, sorry, Mom. Okay, then we try again. So ADD, ADHD, usually something you just deal with. You may or may not have medication. Takes a little longer for them to really calm down and get the message. But it is really common. If you have a birth parent with ADD or ADHD, there's a 40% chance the kiddo will have it. If you have 2 birth parents, it's an 80% chance. Again, nothing that I would ever not adopt for, but just something to keep in mind. Lupus, arthritis, any autoimmune disorder we do counsel on. There's a small increased risk it could happen again. Bipolar, we've talked about. Epilepsy, it's important to know if she was born with it or if an accident or illness has started her seizures. And then, of course, learning disorders. IQ is quite genetic. So you've got to be careful. You know, there's two things. There's IQ, or which is really your ability to learn. But then there's your education and the environment that you were raised in. So your IQ might be 100, which is right in the middle of average, and you were in an amazing environment and you've done amazing. Or you were in a deprived environment and you don't do so well. So be careful. We're not so worried about what IQ is, but do keep in mind if you ever see that the birth mommy struggled and she was in special education, that there could be a small risk for that in the kiddo. Hypothermia, nothing you guys are going to worry too much about. It's more a question I'm going to ask. Has she ever been in a hot tub for too long or had a long extended fever? Because it can give some risk to the baby. Usually spina bifida if it's in weeks 5 and 6. Some of these over-the-counter things we have to be more careful with than we might guess. Aspirin and ibuprofen are both blood thinners. And so we don't want to be thinning your blood too much. I'm not worried if you've used it now and then, once in a while, but I wouldn't want you taking it on a daily basis. Whereas Tylenol, we don't have any issues with it.
Go back a slide or two to the spina bifida. What's a big driver of that these days?
So lack of folic acid. You need folic acid in your body for that spine to properly close. Spine closes on the last day of week 6. There's a lot of reasons that you don't get enough folic acid. That's part of the problem with obesity. If you're more than 100 pounds overweight, your folic acid is now a lot less in comparison to your body weight, which is why most of our foods are fortified. Our breads, our cereals, our milk. But we also want you taking a daily vitamin. But then there's other factors like too hot body heat, 102 or more can keep that spine from closing. It can be genetic. There's genes that can keep that spine from closing. So there's a number of different factors. In general, 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 15 of us will be born with spina bifida. But when you're in different things like a hot tub, that's going to go up to 1 or 2%. So 1 or 2 out of 100 still isn't a very big number, but it's a lot bigger than 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,500. And yes, I am going fast because we don't have a lot of time, and I want to be sure your panel has time. But obviously ask me questions, and also I'll put my number up here at the end, and you can call me anytime. And for those of you who are writing, let me give you my email address. You're always welcome to email me. My email is my first initial and my last name, so it's LWOLFE for Lori Wolf with an E. So LWOLFE@unt.edu. I'm at the University of North Texas. So lwolf with an E @unt.edu. You are welcome. In fact, I just checked my emails today, and there's 3 or 4. We're adopting, and can you assess this situation for us? So just email me, give me all the information you have. If the baby's already born, I love pictures to see what he or she looks like. And then I'll be happy to assess it for you and respond. Caffeine, don't worry about it. All of us, when we're pregnant, can have 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine a day, and there's no known risk. And I just want to mention that because there's so much caffeine in different parts of our diet and different things that we drink. But a little caffeine a day has no known risk. So if she's having 2 cups of coffee, an iced tea, and a Diet Coke, she'd still be within that 300 milligrams. So don't worry too much if you have a bit of caffeine experience in the history. Artificial sweeteners, no worries at all. You can never get enough artificial sweetener. I don't care if rats have birth defects when they, have 100 times what we do. It doesn't apply to us. X-rays, also not a worry most of the time. So there's some background radiation that we're all exposed to all the time, and those low levels of millirads have no known risk. There's no individual diagnostic X-ray that has too much radiation. So unless she's had radiation treatment for cancer, and then you'd have other things to worry about, or maybe she was in a car crash and has had lots of X-rays, but there's really not any other situations that have enough radiation for you to be concerned. Microwaves, I know you think it's a silly question. I have to tell you, when you ask me or when you call me, there's no silly questions. And we get a lot of people who think that standing by a microwave puts out some sort of harmful something or other, but it doesn't. You'd actually be able to get in it, shut the door, and turn it on before I'd be worried. Since they don't work that way, there's no known risk. Video screens, I actually get this all the time. You know, for instance, birth mommies, they put a computer on their tummy and they like to, you know, be on their computer and they're worried about that, or they like to sit next to their TV set or their screen. There's not any known risk anymore. And I show that old television screen because back in the 1960s and earlier, the picture tubes actually did emit ionizing radiation. So if you got a grandma or a great-grandparent now, for some of you, who might have an old TV set around, they actually did emit ionizing radiation, and you don't want to sit by them. Whether or not you're pregnant, you don't want all that ionizing radiation. But it's, honestly, they stopped that in the 1960s, and computer terminals and screens don't do anything to you. And lastly, I want to mention the paternal exposure. You know, a lot of you may not end up knowing who the birth daddy is, and exposure-wise, from my viewpoint, that's not a concern. Because anything that the daddy drinks or smokes or eats or whatever he's exposed to, the only thing it's going to do is make infertility issues, so it's going to reduce his sperm count, make it hard for the woman to get pregnant, or increase the risk for an early miscarriage. There's no paternal exposure that's ever been shown to cause birth defects or learning problems. So once you have a successful pregnancy, we don't worry about the daddy's exposures anymore. I mean, if you come to me in month 2 or month 3 and you say, oh, you know, the guy who got me pregnant was using cocaine, smoking a pack a day, and drinking a 6-pack, I'd still be worried that you have a bit of a miscarriage risk. But if your pregnancy carries, there's no known risk for learning problems or birth defects, and that's really important, especially when you don't know your daddy, your birth daddy. Now, obviously, if you don't know your birth daddy, you also don't know the genetic history, but a lot of us don't necessarily know that much about, you know, even if it's your birth child, you don't necessarily know that much about your family history, or you might have been adopted yourself. So that's pretty common not to know a lot. And this is our 800 number. This is going to ring directly into my office. I'm only there about half the time, but either we'll answer or somebody, you know, go ahead and leave a message. We also have a new texting service. Now, the texting service is not answered just by me. It's answered by me and 5 of my other colleagues across the country, because that's our national texting number. So you are welcome to text if you just have a simple question and you're not worried about which one of us answers it. Out of the 6 of us who answers it, most of us are genetic counselors. I'm a board-certified genetic counselor. The other one, she's got a master's in public health, and she's great. But if you want to talk to me, that's my 800 number right into my office. But if you just want to send a quick text, now texting is not 24 hours a day. You know, we're pretty much during the daytime on the weekdays. So that's just something to know. We don't have enough funding yet. We're all nonprofit organizations without much money, to be honest. And so, you know, we answer you when we can. But if you email me or you call that 800 number, definitely we'll get back to you quickly. So I want to stop there. I think I have about 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any other questions?
It seems as though most of the structural and anatomic abnormalities could be picked up on an ultrasound. Is that something that you
That's a really good question. So if you couldn't hear her question, she's asking about ultrasound exams and what they're going to pick up with the structural birth defects. So remember, any structural birth defect that's going to occur is there by 12 weeks. We can't act, by then you're structurally developed and you're not going to cause any birth defects after week 12. You've got that 3 to 5% background risk for birth defects. Good ultrasounds or sonograms, it's the same word, can get rid of about 3 to 4% of that risk. The risk, that 1% that we can't get rid of, it's going to be things like a cleft palate, a small heart defect, a small intestinal problem, maybe an extra little finger or joint fingers. So there's a number of little things that a sonogram isn't going to be able to pick up. But yes, good sonograms, especially more than one. We like to do the first one to look for birth defects at about 18 to 20 weeks. So let's say she had her first one at 18 to 20 weeks, and maybe 5 to 10 weeks later she had another one. If both of those are normal, you've gotten rid of all but 1% of that background risk for birth defects and any other increased birth defect risk that might have been there from exposures. So yes, it's always wonderful having a normal ultrasound, as long as you realize that there's a few things we're not going to see. They're just hard, they're too hard to read. That was a great question though. Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you so much, and feel free to call me, email me, or text us. So I know next is the panel, and here comes Andrea. That's okay. They're ready for the panel.
Okay, are you guys about ready to finish? Okay, so we're going to start with Joy with our panel, and you have the mic, so I'm just going to.
Hi, my name is Joy, and I am a birth mom of Andrea's. And I actually got pregnant when I was 22. I was in college and raised from a very conservative background, where adoption was always, considered, this amazing thing. But when you're in the shoes to actually be a part of the adoption process, it's a little bit different. A lot different. But I decided really early on, as we discussed before, I believe I was 3 months or maybe even less when I first called them and met with them, and they were very compassionate and kind. And then about 5 months after looking through various books, and I actually chose one couple before, and it didn't work out, and that was just part of God's plan. And wound up with the couple, Alicia and Mike, and they had only been like 3 months in their systems, more or less, I guess is the way you want to put that. And we agreed to meet, and both of us were nervous. We had our questions, and we were very honest, and I think that's a key for everyone here. When you have questions, it's okay to ask. We'd rather you ask, but if you don't have the answer, just say you don't know. Because they had never been parents before, they weren't able to have their own kids, and they hadn't been there yet. And I appreciated that more than a sugar-coated answer that you could see through than anything. And we got along amazing. I had an amazing adoption process because I invited her to come to every doctor visit if she felt comfortable, because she wasn't able to have kids. And it was, like they said earlier, it was our chance to get to know each other. And also their impression of me was very different than what they expected. They expected, you have your stereotypical what they think, oh, they're on drugs, they're not this. No, I was straight A student, a very wonderful family. They met my family. And I made extended family of theirs even. They went to the sonogram. We had a whole room, like in here, and they had little videotape. I mean, the whole gamut. And we also went to birthing classes. She was my birthing coach. And she was the first one to hold Hallie. And I asked for it to be that way. And we had a very open relationship. Now, not everybody is comfortable with that. But I figured, hey, this is my chance. And yes, now, we see each other maybe once a year, but we keep each up to date on Facebook. Even Hallie has her own phone, and they gave her the number to text me and say hi and things like that. So we're very agreeable. Now each person, it's going to be different. So just work with each other and show kindness and patience, and I think it goes quite a long ways. So that's mine. And if y'all want to ask any questions, you can. I just try to speed through that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions that you're wanting to ask about birth mom perspective? Or?
What's your child's age?
She's almost 13. Yeah. So it's been a minute. So right now I'm working on my master's in social work, and in January I'll start doing my last internship and wind up working with her. So it's come full circle. And it's kind of been brewing in the back for a while, and I've always wanted to do something that mattered. And so I would like to help other birth moms in their journey. And it's very rare to have somebody that knows your perspective. And granted, every story is different, but it's nice to have somebody that can really, truly relate. And even though, like Andrea and there was another agent, Robin, they were very kind and real, and they never pressured me in anything. And you know, there were moments where I questioned it, and then, like we talked about earlier, and putting it in perspective for me, they asked me what I truly wanted, the whole picture for Hallie, and could I do that just with my own, just myself? And I truly couldn't. And so that put it in perspective for me, and you have to realize you're gonna feel things, but if you're truly at peace with your decision, you know, your feelings will come and go. And then there's hard times, and whenever you do have the baby, you're gonna have that time for grieving, because it's truly a grieving process. But now, and really I don't think it truly heals. Now this is maybe for me, and maybe you can relate to until you have another baby, and it really comes full circle, and it really heals your heart. So. Where's?
Okay, right behind you.
Oh.
Feels weird to speak into this thing and know that it's not echoing through the ceiling. My name is Kristen, and I'm an adoptive mom. I don't consider myself adoptive mom. I consider myself mom. But in our circumstances, I placed, my daughter was placed with us through Andrea, and she's 4.5, not 4, 4.5, because I can't say 4. I get corrected by her. And my husband and I met in, I don't even know when it was, 2003. And married in 2007 and had 3 pregnancies in our first year of marriage and lost all 3. And I'm not gonna, don't you start, because you start, I start. So it was very difficult, and I remember at one point my husband came to me and he goes, well, why not adoption? And I laugh about it now to this day. I said, I want my own baby. Now, my daughter, and Andrea knows, and I actually have a personal friend here who has met my daughter. My daughter could not be more my own daughter than the child that I would have birthed myself. And when you look at God's provisions and God's plan for you, I can now look back and say, that's why I went through all of that pain. Because God had my daughter ready for me, she just didn't come through me. And she looks just like me, and God love her, she acts just like me. And we have a very semi-open relationship with her birth mom. In fact, we saw her last week, the week before. And my daughter Kate knows Jennifer as, she doesn't call her birth mom, she knows her as Jennifer, and she knows that she grew in Jennifer's tummy so mommy and daddy could have a baby. Because that's what she understands at this point. And we have books that we read about adoption with her. And now her new thing is, tell me about the day I came. I was like, you mean the day you came home or the day you were born? And that's been the thing for the past week. She wants to know about the day I came to you. And she does understand how she came to mommy and daddy and how we became a family. Our experience, we signed, if you will, on the dotted line with Andrea on November 11th of 2011. And our daughter was literally born 10 months to the day from there on September 11th of 2012. Our birth mom, we didn't meet her until the end of August, and I got the call, which I can promise you, that those of you that are going to be adoptive parents, that's the call. And it literally knocks the wind out of your sails. I was doubled over. I don't even know if I spoke for a couple of minutes on the phone. And then you have this feeling of reservation. It's like, oh gosh, what if it doesn't work? But I decided to prayerfully go through it and say, I'm going to dive in 100% because this is going to be how we create our family. If we get hurt, we've been hurt already, we'll just keep on plugging. And we have a wonderful birth mom who we met a week later, and then 2 weeks later she went into the hospital for a quick check, and 6 days later our daughter was born. So we went from 0 to baby in 3 weeks. And it was an adjustment period, we'll call it. We had the Saturday before she was born, we knew that Jennifer was dilated to a 4, and I called Andrea, I said, we just had the weirdest experience. We just went through bye-bye baby on a Saturday, and we registered. It was really kind of strange, and I think we have somewhere for her to sleep now, because I was determined I would never be a mother and never set up a nursery until after we brought our baby home. So I got the call from Andrea 7:45 that morning, and she said, Jen's on the way to the hospital. I said, does she want me there? She's like, yeah. She said, go on ahead. So I flew out of work. I teach, so I left all of my children and literally left the building. and didn't come back for 11 weeks. And due to a lot of circumstances of her delivering so quickly, I was in the delivery room with her. And one thing I will never forget is she had just given birth to this beautiful baby girl, and Jennifer looked at me and she said, "Your little girl is here." And I thought, my gosh, you were lying there on the table. You just gave, talk about a shotgun birth to this beautiful baby without medication, because it happened so quickly, and you're telling me my little girl is here. And they brought her to me and put her in my arms, and luckily Andre was there to capture it. She looked in my eyes, and that's what I tell Kate. I said, and that's when we fell in love. And it has been a true love that I never could have imagined, and the gift of adoption is truly God's plan for us. And the relationship I have with Jennifer, I told Andre just the other day, I said, I feel kind of like you're her mom and I'm her sister or something. And we see her at least once a year. I'm kind of insane and send lots of pictures to Andrea, sometimes 5 a week or more, because I know that nobody else, and the birth moms sitting in here know, nobody else can understand how much I love my daughter other than Jennifer. And she shared that with me. The least I can do is share that her daughter that she gave birth to has a beautiful life. So if you have any questions for me, I'm just on the whim, as I was walking out the door, I brought our profile book and our flyer, and then the book that Andrea gave us and Jennifer after Kate was born. And you're more than welcome to look at those once we finish up. But if you have questions, if you want to ask now, feel free. If you have any questions and you want to come to me later. But, okay.
Do you mind sharing, because there are some families that are a little bit more hesitant to have a little more of an open relationship with the birth moms, and I think that they're just scared because they don't know. And kind of address that with them. Is that something that should be scared about, or because you know what I'm saying? Because we talked about, for those that have talked to me, it's like it's okay to have that once a year meeting because it's not scary. It's not scary as you think it's going to be.
We see each other 2 to 3 times a year, and the first time, Jennifer's birthday is 2 weeks after Kate was born, and so Joel and Andrea and their daughter came, and we all went to dinner right after Kate was born. And from there, the meetings we've had, Andrea hasn't been able to come. I was like, if you want to come, you can come. We're just going to be there. Can you just tell her where we'll be? And that's how we communicate, is through Andrea. And it's a great experience, and we're still continuing to get to know one another. I feel like I know a lot more about her than she may know about us, and so we're still, when we got together last week, building this relationship. But it's important to me, because I know it's important to my daughter, that she needs to know where she came from, that she needs to know that she wasn't given up by any means. And there's a lot of adoption, non-friendly terminology you'll hear out there. And my daughter was not given up by any means. She has a birth mom who could not provide for her, and she knew it and wanted to make sure she had a better life. And I feel like I owe that to Jennifer, to let her know she does have that better life. And she's an extended part of our family. As soon as she was born, my sister was rushed to the hospital, and I asked Jennifer, I said, is it okay? She goes, yeah, bring her in, I want to meet her. And my parents showed up, and then my next set of parents showed up, and my best friend from college showed up. And we stayed up, she and I stayed up till way too late in the night, especially considering she'd just given birth, just talking, because I actually slept on the couch next to her bed in her room. And we got to know each other that way and created a really special bond. And the next morning, the doctor came in at 5 o'clock and said, yeah, if you want to go home, you can go home. And she was ready to go home. She had a son at home that she wanted to get home to. And that was a very difficult goodbye, and still is a difficult goodbye every time we see each other. Because I know that we can't have that, oh, let's go shopping, or hey, you want to come over kind of relationship. But we have the relationship that works for her and that works for us. Also in conversations with Andre, we've talked that Kate is getting older and she's going to start questioning things, but we've made the decision that if it gets to the point that Kate is acting out or having behavioral issues, or we know that she's not comfortable, Jennifer and I will meet. Or my husband and Jennifer and I will meet, and Todd, my husband, might stay home with Kate, however we need to work it. but we don't want to create any confusion in her life, but we're also very open with her. I'm not nervous, I'm freezing cold, so I'm shaking. But we also want to be very open with her in how she came to be a part of our family and how we became a family. Did that answer the question? Yeah, so if you have any questions now, feel free to ask, or if you want to come talk to me one-on-one, I'm more than happy to answer anything I can.
Hi, my name is Davina Lowe, and my story is when I was 17, through a traumatic circumstance, I became pregnant. And I immediately decided, once I found out, like 3 months later, I immediately decided that I was going to place for adoption. So my mom and I got on the internet, and we searched and searched and searched, and finally found Andrea, who was a godsend from the beginning. She became a sister, a best friend, a second mom, and a counselor. Because I was so set in my decision, Andrea immediately started letting me meet families. And I met one, and it kind of didn't work out. You know, we had different ideas of what should happen. And then a couple of months later, I knew about this family who was in the program, but just for their pictures, I didn't really feel a connection. But I knew that the previous year, they had given birth to twin girls and sadly lost them both within 15 days to preeclampsia. Sorry. And Lori herself almost lost her life, and Matt almost lost his wife. Thank you. Oh, I'm a sob story, you know. Anyway, so I had been praying for them throughout these couple of months, and Andrea told me that there was a family out there that was praying for me in my situation, knowing my story and how I got pregnant. And all of a sudden I was just like, you know what, I think I want to meet these people. You know, so we met at the office, which I hadn't done before. And when Lori walked in, the baby started kicking, like frantically flailing. I was like, relax, child. This is my body you're assaulting here. And so the baby immediately started kicking, and it was just like, I didn't even have to talk to her. I knew it was it. These were the parents that were going to give my baby the life that I couldn't give. I was a baby. I was 17. I had no business raising one. You know, and I wanted a semi-open adoption at first, just because I didn't want to get too close, too emotionally involved, and it became an open adoption. We had you can ask Andrea, a surprisingly fast connection. And while I'm a very private person, I still wanted to keep Lori in the loop. I sent them ultrasound pictures. You know, we met all the time. Our favorite place to meet was IHOP, and I still take pictures there just to send them to her. And it was really incredible. I had a very easy pregnancy. And then at 2 a.m., August 1st, 2009, I went into labor. And it was like, I wasn't trying to sleep or anything. Don't worry, come when you want. And it was, sadly, a very long labor, difficult. I refused medication, which Andrea was like, really, you don't have to do this. And so I absolutely refused medication. I don't curse. I don't like cursing. And I cursed the nurse out that asked me if I wanted an epidural. Kind of made my mom blush. So I gave birth, and this beautiful baby boy arrived. I hadn't found out the gender. Kind of drove Matt and Lori crazy, but they were also excited to not know. And does this thing work?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Just for the camera.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry. Okay. And this beautiful baby boy arrived, and we had discussed names, and they wanted to name him William, which is a crazy strong name. I love it. And I was shaking, and I had just given birth, and anybody who has given birth knows that it's like afterward. But my first coherent words were, I gave them a son. After everything we had both been through, we fought through the battle, and I was able to give them a son. The blessing on it is just so immense. A couple of years later, Matt and Lori were thinking about adopting again. And surprise, Lori got pregnant. Of course, once you have eclampsia, the risk is higher. Having twins, the risk is higher. They carried, and they have a little 4 or 5-year-old boy who is now William's little brother. And I couldn't thank Andrea enough for helping me in everything. I refused counseling afterward because my counseling was talking to the other girls. And I do have an amazing piece about it. And it's an incredible experience. William will be 8, August 1st. So, yeah. So if anybody has questions, I love to talk about it. I'm not shy about my story. Probably should be, but I'm not. Just with how it started. Yeah, most people are, but I'm not. So feel free to ask questions now, later, whatever. I'm open. So any questions right now, though? No? Awesome, possum.
I got one question.
Yes.
So when you said in the very beginning that the first set of parents
Mm-hmm.
have different interests, what were some of the different interests, I guess?
Let me see. Well, when we met at first, I really didn't feel much of a connection. I am a touchy-feely person with people that I'm close to, but as far as strangers, I have a personal space bubble and don't pop it. And she wanted to touch my stomach and kind of did without permission, so that made me nervous immediately. And then kind of just throughout the whole thing, they made me feel like it was more like a business transaction instead of an adoption. Like I was giving them a baby, I wasn't selling them my car. And it just didn't work out. And just like y'all have to have a connection with the birth mother, she has to have a connection with you too. And so, that's probably some little advice. Be personable, be friendly, ask permission to touch her, because she's technically carrying your baby if she picks you, but it's still her body right now. I did want to tell you, I forgot, a really quick story, and Andrea has this poem. I'm an artist of many forms, but one of my main forms of just to express emotion is poetry. And when I decided that Matt and Lori were my adoptive parents for my son, I wrote them a poem, and it's called The Little White Box. And I bought them a little white box that had different things for photos. It's a little white box that's filled with love. So if you ever want to read it, I'm sure she still has it. If not, I can forward it to you. It's a pretty powerful poem. And it's like literally I met with them, and that was how I told them that they were the parents that I chose. I gave them this poem, I gave them this box. And I think Lori has it framed. But, so yeah, I just wanted to share that little extra tidbit because I think that's a cool little part of my story. Anyway, thank you. Any more questions? I forgot.
Can I kind of address real quick what you said? One thing my husband and I met on a blind date. We met online, and meeting our birth mom, it was almost like a blind date. You know, when you meet someone, you just kind of click, you connect, you feel comfortable, you feel at ease. And when you leave after that date, you're feeling like, you know, wow, I might go out with that person again, kind of thing. And you have to make that connection because it's for the child. It's not for anybody else, but the birth moms have the best interest of their child at heart, and we have the best interest of our potential child at heart. And so
You be who you are.
yeah.
Really show who you are.
And sometimes it's not your fault. You know, sometimes it's nothing you can do. You know, last blind date, you either click with that person or you don't. But if you do, encourage that.
But you know, here's what's so funny about that. It's a great question too. But so, this, ironically, so the family that, and this is how God works. So if you don't, if it does, and most meetings go great, but if it doesn't, there's not a connection, there's a reason for it, and it's okay. Because the family that Davina was not matched with, they had the match that God had for them. And the picture that you see on my flyer is their baby. So it's kind of cool, and I'm glad it's so kind of cool that you mentioned them, because coming full circle, their baby that was meant to be for them is actually the one that's on the poster. Because it was the most perfect match. But so sometimes it's not going to work out, or there's not a connection, but it's always okay, because the one that is meant to be with you will be right for you. Your baby is out there.
I love what you said, that their baby was out there for them,
Oh, yeah.
but it didn't come through me. It didn't come through her. It came from the wonderful woman who gave them that child. If it's meant to be, it'll be.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Davina. She drove from College Station, come all the way over here.
Hey, I just got back from Colorado. That's nowhere near as far as drive.
Hey everyone, my name is Elliot Scrimorin, and 25 years ago I was adopted. I was adopted by one of the most selfless, loving, and incredible individuals I know, and to this day, she is my top role model. She is my birth mother. I also call her mom, even though she never came to me and said she wanted for me to call her mom. I still call her my mom because she is my mom, and also my adopted mom is my mom. Now, unfortunately, I can't really give you the nitty-gritty on what the adoption process is like because I wasn't too involved. I was still in the womb. I was still being born. So I can't really give you too much information there, but I want to give you a few memories I have from growing up being adopted. And so the first one I remember, I was very little. It's just like, I only remember like little bits of it. I had jaundice. And so one of the things we always laugh about this is I was like a plant. They had to set me in this windowsill and rotate me just so I got enough sun. That's one of the first memories I had. It's very vague, not too much like else I can share with you on that, but it's something we can always look back on and laugh about. I know jaundice isn't really like something you would laugh about, but if you think about it, you're like a plant, you have to be rotated in the sun in a windowsill. It gets a little funny. The next memory I had was several years later. I was about 8 or 9 years old. We went out to visit my birth mom and my birth grandmother, and my birth grandmother was dying, and she wanted to see all of her grandchildren before she passed. We went to her house, and one of the things I remember was on the wall was pictures of all of her grandchildren, including me. Now, I had never seen her until this time, and it really touched my heart to see that I was also part of their family. They had not forgotten me, they loved me, they accepted me as their family, even though I had not seen them, some of them, ever. We were only supposed to be there for about an hour or so, and it was just me, my mother, and my sister. And we ended up being there almost all day. Now, I'm terrified of spiders, but I actually had never had so much fun going out and capturing spiders. In their backyard, they had all these holes in the ground, and apparently there's tarantulas in there, and so we went out and caught some tarantulas. I was terrified, but I was also having the time of my life with my birth mother and my biological sister. A couple years later, I went through a rough phase in my life where my grandmother on my adopted family passed away, and my sister was moving out to college. Both of them are also incredible role models in my life. And it was just really difficult during that time. I had lost my grandmother, and my sister was gone. I mean, she was in a She was up at Boston College. And so it was a really rough year for me, and my birth mother and my mom, they were always in touch. I mean, they kept in touch before I was born, and I mean, to this day, they keep in touch. They actually talk quite often, which is awesome, I think. But yeah, so my birth mother recognized that I was having a really difficult time, and so she spoke with my mom and said he might just need a little more space right now. And so for a while, I didn't talk to them at all. I just kind of needed my adoptive parents, and I mean, they just kind of like helped me through that time. It was very difficult. But then a few years later after that, I remember reaching out to my sister, my biological sister, sorry, I get the terms sometimes mixed up. I see them all as one big family. So I met with my biological sister. We went to the Galleria. We met at Mi Casina, and it was really fun just because we hadn't seen each other in several years. I mean, we had grown up by now. I think we were 18 at the time. She was 19. And we were playing like mimes or charades. Like we were like almost looking at each other like through a mirror. We hadn't seen each other in a while, so we wanted to like see like what we looked like. Did we look similar? We did. We actually looked very similar. And we also just like wanted to see what our interests were. So we actually had fairly similar interests. We both, I mean, we're kind of like adrenaline junkies. We like to go play putt-putt. We like Mexican food. So we had a lot of things that were similar. And it was just a really fun way to meet each other, I guess, again, after a period of time. After that point, I started hanging out with them more frequently. So I actually went out to restaurants with them fairly often. We did go to a lot of Mexican restaurants. I don't know, I just love Mexican food, so it's great, or Tex-Mex food. So we went out to restaurants a lot, and I mean, I've been also up at college and working the past 2 years in Cleveland, so unfortunately I haven't had the time to see them as often. They're in Dallas, but I also haven't really been here to see my adopted family. So, I mean, now that I moved back 3 weeks ago, so I'm actually planning on having lunch with my birth mom this week, and just like kind of rekindling our relationship now that I'm back. But we did talk on the phone quite often when I was gone. And I mean, never once in my life did I not feel loved. And I think, I mean, for me, I came from a small family. Well, my adopted family is small, so I have one older sister. She's 7 years older, and then I have my two parents. Seeing that I was adopted, and again, I've known as long as I can remember, I mean, since maybe I was like a day old, I don't know, just like when I can first remember, I've always known I was adopted, and I just see it as my family getting bigger. Now, if you have a big family, I don't know what that'll be like, but coming from a small family, you just see it as a bigger family, which is really nice. I mean, it's nice to have like another sister, another brother. I've never met my dad, unfortunately, but I mean, if the opportunity arose, I would definitely be interested in meeting him. But yeah, I mean, I'm just so incredibly blessed, and both of my moms, and my dad, and my sisters. I mean, I just love them to death, and I know I am always loved. I mean, I really can't speak more highly of them. They've always been in touch with each other. It's been difficult at times, especially for my dad and my adoptive sister, just because, I mean, it's difficult to see, like, yeah, I have another sister, or I have another father as well. But they've all worked together to maintain an incredible foundation and relationship with each other. So again, I'm just so incredibly blessed, and I can tell you, adoption is nothing to, I mean, it can be a little scary, but it's honestly the most rewarding thing ever, both for the birth mom, for the birth dad, for the birth sister, for the adopted family. I mean, it's definitely something to look at, definitely. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. Unfortunately, again, I can't speak on behalf of the actual process, but I can speak on experiences of being adopted. I can also tell you, I guess just a little piece of wisdom from my 25 years of life, that from the kids and parents I've actually spoken with, just kind of people who are our family friends who are looking at adopting, tell your kids as soon as they know, or as soon as they can like fully understand. If you wait until them later in life, like when they're pubescent or puberty stages of life, or even older, they tend to go through an identity crisis, and it doesn't really end up well. So make sure you tell your kid as soon as you know, or as soon as they can fully understand. Again, I've known it all my life, so it's just something, a little piece of wisdom from my 25 years of life. Any questions? Oh. Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, you said that you have your biological sister that's from your birth mom is only what, a year younger than you?
A year older.
A year older than you?
Yep.
How did that feel like in your minds that she had another child so close with you?
So it actually, I just saw it again as she was my sister. She was older than me. I still loved her. We led different lives, but she was still my sister. I didn't have any feelings of like dislike towards her, or I didn't like ever want to meet her. We loved each other. Even though we hadn't seen each other for periods of times for a few years, but yeah, she's still my sister to this day. I'll always love her. So, any other questions? So next.
Okay, so Arian, you're next. And what's funny is that your dad, but you were small, delivered your baby. Yeah, I was like,
That's awesome. So, my name is Ariane, and my son's about to be 14 in October. And Andrea and I have had quite the experience ever since the day we met on the phone. I was very upset. I had just found out I was pregnant, and I had 3 daughters. I was maybe 18. I've had a rough childhood, but I had a full-time job, my own little place, finally, after struggling for so long, and I was pregnant, single mom. It was an unplanned pregnancy. The situation was a very difficult situation. I knew from the very beginning that I was not going to keep this child. I knew this child was not going to be raised by me. I had no stability financially. I didn't have any sort of support. So I knew that I was not going to raise this child. My first thought, even though my beliefs were against abortion, was abortion. I tried to get money together, borrow money, whatever. It didn't happen. Why? Because God has a plan for everything, and we always seem to be putting our foot in when we're not supposed to and mess things up for ourselves. I called several abortion clinics, and for one reason or another, it didn't happen. So I know that the second thing that came to mind was adoption. I know 2 of my siblings on my mom's side, she placed for adoption, and I knew very little of it. I really didn't have much of a family to look towards, for information on that. So I went into the Yellow Pages. Back in the days, there was Yellow Pages, and this is like a phone book that we use instead of Google or, these devices that we can actually, use these days. And of course, abortion is right before adoption. So that's where I went for abortion as well. But I went for the first couple of adoption, numbers. And the first, at this point, I'm already devastated. I'm pregnant. I'm against abortion. I'm going to do something that I have no idea what I'm doing. I called the first adoption agency, and it was not a good experience. Not only were they very rude when I called them, they were talking to others while we were on the phone, and they were going to get back at me. I didn't hear from them. I gave it a couple of days, and I was walking back and forth, just wondering what was I going to do. So I go back to the Yellow Pages, and I go to the next ad. And I see a little tree, and I told Andrea, I said, I saw little monkeys hanging from there. I thought it was cute. So I called the number, and I hear a sweet voice. Of course, it was Andrea. And I'm going to be upfront. I'm a real blunt person, and some people might take it, I'm disrespectful, but I thought she was fake. I really thought she was too happy of a lady that I'm not used to it. I was raised in a rough neighborhood. I come from a rough childhood. So I'm thinking, oh gosh, please, you know. So I said, look, this is my situation. I'm pregnant. I have 3 daughters. I don't plan on keeping this child. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I said, what's the next step? I'm a go-getter. You know, if I need something, let's go. What do we have to do? And let's go and get it. She comes out, I don't know if it was the same day or the following day, but she immediately took that time out of her schedule, and I was her first phone call. So, yeah, so I was just shocked on how nice she was. I was like, okay, real soon I'm gonna get that real Andrea. And no, she from the very beginning has been the sweetest person, the realest person, and she saw the ugliest of me. Through pregnancy, through the ugly person I was, because just yesterday she said that she's seen me grow up. And I mean, come on, I was 18, you know? What does an 18-year-old know about life? With 3 kids, I was a kid myself, you know? I was a kid learning how to raise a kid. I was very picky with my birth parents. I will tell you that. I didn't know anybody with an experience like me. I was really close. I was a loner because of, you know, my family. But she would tell me, oh, you know, there's this family, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I was maybe 4 or 5 months when I started to consider the families that were, you know, being offered. I said, you know what, I wanna meet who I'm going to allow into my child, you know, his life, you know, to raise him. At this point, I didn't know if it was a girl or boy, but I met 2 couples. The first couple had already had the wonderful experience of adopting, and there was nothing wrong with them. There was nothing wrong with them at all. I don't, you know, they were sweet, they were kind, you know, the little girl was adorable. She had curly hair, I remember that. And I left, and there was just not a connection. Like, you know when you know who it is, who it's going to be. Not too much later, I interviewed another couple that had been through quite the experience with the same person, and they kept on backing off. So at this point, this couple was already, I mean, they were humble. Not to say they weren't before, but the situation, because they weren't able, for whatever reason, able to have children themselves, you know, they got up to the point to where they're about to hold their baby in their arms, and then the person backs off. I can't begin to imagine what that would feel like. I'm pretty sure it's devastating. Well, we hit it off. I went in there, I met them, and pretty much what you see now, pretty much. And I just asked questions, and they told me about themselves, and I told them about me. They met my children, and I went to the parking. When I left that place, and I went to the parking, and I called Andrea. I said, Andrea, I know this might be too soon. You might want me to sleep on it or whatever, think it through, but this is it. That's them. I want those people, Monica and Raul, to be the mom and the dad for my child. And I don't know if you told them right away, but they were there from the first, sonograms, they were there at the ultrasounds. They would call me, how am I doing, if I needed anything. And as far as my girls, they were tiny. It was 1, 2, and 3. They were 1, 2, and 3 years old. And this is Liliana. She was my 2-year-old at the time. My oldest, she was going to kindergarten. And they've seen me with a belly. Well, after I had my son Juan, in the Hispanic, I guess, families, it's very hard to comprehend why not keep the baby in the family. It's not easy for a lot of us. We're very criticized, looked down upon. My father was one of them, my uncles, my grandmother, you know, they would say certain things, and I was a very tough cookie. I was that, like, I know what I'm doing. If I'm gonna mess up, let me pay my consequence. Let me go with it. That's the way I'm going to learn, let me go. So these people that would see me walking to the school with no pregnancy, no child and a carrier, you know, usually I'll have like a little kangaroo, that's what they call them, to carry, you know, they didn't see that. Oh, where's your baby? With their mom, with his mom and his dad, his family, you know, I would say, and they're like, wouldn't understand. It's like, yeah, I had a baby, but it wasn't for me, you know, I had it for a couple that couldn't have children, you know. And their face, their expression. But I would just keep on walking. Why? Because this is a journey. You know, this is a journey. We don't have rules to, and we don't know. We don't know our next steps. So I just, you know, kept on. And I know I was criticized. I know, but it made me stronger. You know, it made me pull forward. And when I saw that the adopted parents would go to the ultrasounds, they would go to every appointment, when they revealed the gender, I knew from the beginning it was going to be a boy, because the girls, I was flipping up to like 8, 9 months of pregnancy, and with this little boy, I was like sick all the time, in a bad mood. I was always having heartburn. Just the experience that I've never, and I said, yeah, this is not a girl. This is definitely not a girl. So yeah, it was a boy, you know, and they were so happy, and you know, we started going over things that they were, you know, that was going to take place as we got closer to the delivery date. I did get induced, right? I had an induced birth, and it was an experience. It was an experience because I had a very small belly. I looked like probably what I look like now when I was 9 months pregnant, but they asked me, the families, I guess the couple's mom asked me, you know, do you want us to be around? I was like, yeah, you know, come around. And Andrea asked me, she came and said, she's like, Arian, I know you're going to be tired. I know you're going to want some rest. I know that a lot of people in your room can be kind of stuffy in there. And I said, yeah, no, I want to see what my child is going to have around him at all times, because this child is going to be a blessed child. And I know they have a big family. I don't know how many people were in that room. There was a lot of people in that room, but I felt like it was a blessing for me. I don't know as a parent what they felt like having their family there, you know, but for me, I knew my child was going to be loved. My child was going to have what I didn't have, what I couldn't offer. Just everything that I never had. There was one thing that the grandmother did tell me. She said, if there's one thing that you want for us to do, just anything, what would that be? And as you said, honesty is the best thing. You have a child, you are going to instill good things into that child. Honesty is one. Honesty is going to go a long way, because they're trusting you. They're trusting you to take care of that child and to show that child right. They're trusting you to do what's right, and that's going to be one of the things that they're going to grow up with. If you lie to them, or if you keep it from them, that's what you're teaching them. You know, to withhold things, and that's not a good thing. Being honest, you know, at least they know they're walking straight in the right way. And she said, okay. She's like, I will make sure that he knows. I said, yeah, let him know he has family that loves him. Let him know he has siblings. At this point, I only have 3 girls. Now, I have 3 boys more. So it was a different experience because it was my first boy. I did think about that, and I thought, wow, I've always wanted a boy from the very first child. And the first boy I had, I put this boy for adoption. But this little boy, you put him next to us, and he looks just like all of my children. All of my children look so different from each other, but they all look alike, and it's amazing. But he calls me mom. He calls me mom. And the first time I heard him, I was like, whoa, hold on. He called me mom, you know? And yes, that's my son, you know? And what we agreed to was a semi-open adoption, just because if it was an open adoption, and everybody's opinion for open adoption is, you know, it can be different, I wanted them to have a family. I don't want to be over there, you know, this is from my experience. I don't want to be over there every Sunday and, oh yeah, you know, I want them to have the real thing, you know, that's my mom, that's my dad, you know, this is my mom or my birth mom, you know. I want them to raise that child, take him to practices, take him, you know, to his little plays at school. You know, I want them to have the whole thing. You know, when it feels right for them to take him to go visit us, to call us. We get pictures, you know, every other month on the phone. I talk to her, I give her updates. You know, she comes and sees the girls, how big they've gotten. You know, he's met his younger siblings, and yes, there is a little bit of resentment there because I did have children after him, you know, and he wasn't too bothered with my oldest son that I have at home, but I guess it was because of the age at that time. Well, he got a little bit older, and he had a loss in the family. I don't know if he needed to get closer to me or talk to me or, you know, get comforted in some sort of way by visiting with us. But that year I was pregnant, and he had lost his grandfather, and he found out I was pregnant, and I had to be on bed rest that pregnancy, this last pregnancy, and he was upset. He was upset because he wanted to know, well, you know, why? That's when it started kicking in. You know, she had kids after me. How come, you know? We haven't gotten to speak about it yet. You know, he's going to be 14 this year, but he is a sweet, sarcastic little boy that is just like all the other kids I have. The sarcasm is not getting along with me. I just, it's cute to a certain point, you know, but he's my son. And I do not ever, yes, there's been times that I've thought, what if? What would have been like if I would have kept my child? I didn't have a very pleasant time after I had him. It wasn't like it is now, that I can provide for my children by myself. It's not like now that the girls are older and they can help me out. He would have gone through a lot of hell, and forgive me for that, but he would have. I wouldn't have been able to provide for him the way he has, you know, everything that he needs spiritually and financially and every area, other area. But I don't regret not one time have I ever said, what if I've kept them, I would have, you know, I would have loved it. No, I'm glad, and I am happy for the decision I did make, you know, and any negativity that anybody gives you, it's your experience. You know your reasons, you have your whys, and make sure it's something that you're in it, to stay in it. You know, I can't go now, oh, I want my child back. It doesn't work that way. I knew from the moment I met this family, and to this day I wouldn't have picked any other family. Everything that maybe I should have done during pregnancy emotionally and after birth hit as I handed over my child to their parents. It was a lot. It was sobbing, like uncontrollably. And I made everybody cry. But that was it. Because I prepared myself for the whole time. I was not going to take it. This is the best thing I can give my child. So as I go, Andrea took me to the store because I had these awful after labor pains. And she's like, are you okay? You know, it felt like a bubble for a couple of days, you know, because I mean, we're sore, you know, you breastfeed or, you know, you have milk. But I slept. They even came the following day. Are you sure? And you're still, you know, under the influence of those drugs, you know, of the painkillers and all that. Are you sure you want to sign? You know, are you sure you have? I was like, no. So everybody in that place, because I had just moved. It was a new apartment, everything. Everybody knew I was pregnant, but everybody knew. Don't ask her because she's going to tell you, and that's what she, you know, that's, so I was okay with it, you know, and then we got the pictures, you know, little by little, and I was okay. I was fine, but I had that break at the hospital as I handed over my child. But it was a beautiful cry. You know, it was just a bunch of mixed emotions at that moment, but it was a relief. You know, it was like, okay, I think I was holding that in for a while. I can breathe now. You know, my baby's safe. You know, so it was a beautiful thing. It was.
I know for me, kind of the same situation, everything hit, but I had this supernatural peace about the whole thing since day one. And so when I was walking out of the hospital, you know, I didn't have to like hand the baby. I had already done that. Well, I was still in the labor bed being stitched up, and I hand the baby over. But it really truly hit me about 3 months later. You know, I had already signed all, you know, given up all my rights and everything like that. And about 3 months later, I was thinking, and I had just seen William for the first time at his quote-unquote baby shower, since it happened afterward. And I went home, and I was alone, and I just broke down. But like she said, it was a beautiful cry. It was like, these are all of the emotions that I had suppressed my entire pregnancy. I forced myself to hate when I felt him kicking, just because I didn't want to get that emotional attachment. I did not want to risk saying no to those parents after I gave birth, because in my mind that's cruel. It happens, and I completely understand. I have an 18-month-old now. I completely understand how it happens. But so I, like, you know, like you did, I suppressed those feelings my entire pregnancy. And then after I saw him, it was like it wasn't just this wiggling red thing that I handed over. You know, this was a little girly. He was like bouncing on my lap, and I went home, and it all hit me. But I never once regretted it. I had a moment of doubt when I had to stop seeing him when he was 3. We went forth with, you know, me not seeing him anymore, just for the risk factors of just him getting confused and everything like that, especially considering they had another little boy. But I mean, that was the only part, but I immediately squelched it because it was like, that is just me being selfish. I went throughout the whole process. I'm doing what's best for my baby. I'm not going to stop now. And that's, so I mean, it was still a blessing all in all.
Yeah. I think, for me, I had similar moments because you have to stay in the hospital at least. It was 3 days whenever I had that. So the second day, the first day it's all elation. The second day it hit really bad. And they were very honest. They were like, you don't have to do this. And very similar, I recognized that it was just a moment, you know, and it was very, very hard. But for me, then when I did get home, I had the added aspect of the father. They actually found that he had sent a letter in contest right as they were going to do the signing of termination. So there was a bit of limbo situation, and it was hard on the parents, and it was hard on me too, because you had that situation where you're like, the parents were afraid I was going to take her back, and I was sitting there, and I wasn't going to do that, but it made it much harder with the stress of that situation, which of course he didn't do anything other than that. It was like, he wrote a letter. And that's all he did. And they kind of assured me of that too, because they did a whole background check on him, and all kinds of things came up, and he had 6 other different kids by 6 other different women. He didn't take care of any of them, and blah, 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 blah. So therefore that, you know, kind of assured me that he wasn't going to take care of this one either. So, but for me, I just had to allow myself an actual grieving process. She didn't die, but it was a loss. And recognize that there were going to be those really hard days. There were going to be the moments where you felt amazing on what had happened, etc.
It doesn't get easier. On these hard days, it still gets us.
that too, that I didn't prepare for as an adoptive mother, and that was the guilt I felt. I have, here I am, oh, my dreams have all come true. I'm going home with my baby. And I literally pulled out of the parking lot with a squeaky little thing in my back seat and called my girlfriend, who's an adoptive mom, and I said, I'm driving home with my baby. I have a take-home baby. I'm going home. And I got home an hour later, and then I called her. I said, now she needs to eat. What do I do? So do I use the microwave? I mean, I don't know what to do all of a sudden. But as I knew she was grieving, because we brought Kate home literally 24 hours later before rights had even been signed. And I still remember Andre saying, if you would like, she's like, no, I need to ask you, would you like for her to go into cradle care? I was like, oh, no, she's going home with us. And I knew the moment that Jennifer was relinquishing her rights, and I knew that she had to be grieving, and I knew that physically she was, recovering, and the guilt I felt, I literally, to myself one day said, I just took her baby. And that was something I wasn't prepared for. And I'm sure I probably called you, oh, did I take her baby? Is that, are you okay? And so, I was concerned about her emotional and physical health, and still am. And I had to work through a little bit of that guilt. It was very odd and something I wasn't prepared for at all.
It's true, and a lot of adoptive moms tell me that, like, if they give the baby, and then a lot of adoptive moms like, I want to adopt her, take her home,
Lori told me that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot about her. I do hear that a lot. But this has been a very touching and very honest panel, and I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your story. And I hate.
I don't ever want this to be where you're opening the wound again, and it's painful. I know that you are happy with your decision, and it's brought you peace. You have peace with it, but it's it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet. It is, And so I appreciate you guys opening your heart and sharing with everyone what your experience was, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about everything and hearing the stories, and it's all educational too. So thank you guys for coming, and I know we went over a little over past 3:30, but I do appreciate you guys coming and spending time with us. So thank you so much. And feel free to call me if you have questions.